It's all right. Okay. Good morning. Could everybody please take a seat? So we can try to be timely today. Effort. Welcome to our March Board of Trustees meeting. We had a terrific day yesterday, a wonderful tour presentation about the University of Maine, and heard from some very engaging students. It was a terrific day, and we thank President Joan Farini-Mundy for and her team for all the work. It was terrific. Thank you. Let's begin. We do have a trustee joining us by Zoom. So trustees who participate by technology do count toward a quorum, but to confirm that she can hear her, Ellen, you'll take the roll for one person.
Trustee Loring, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Donna.
Morning.
And a reminder that this is streamed YouTube, and for our members, remember to speak into the microphone so that people can hear us. Let's open with citizen comment. We have a number of them. I put my glasses on, but I still can't necessarily read exactly some of these names. So I apologize in advance for botching any, but let's start with Gary McGrane. And we'd ask speakers to speak no more than 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. As you heard, my name is Gary McGrane, and I'm here to represent the Maine Education Association retired group of workers, represent PK through 12 and higher ed, which of course is the University of Maine and the community colleges here in the state. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity today to speak to you regarding issues that our members are experiencing through the University of Maine Retirement Insurance Program. Many of us are very disappointed that the response or lack thereof about insurance coverage. We failed to get accurate information. For example, a gentleman by the name of John, who is fictitious, but is a real person, is frustrated that his efforts to get his hospital bills paid is causing great stress. He has been trying to file the bill with the insurance company without any success. They keep rejecting his claim to keep the collection agency from continuing to harassing him. He paid anywhere between $15,000 to $20,000 out of pocket. He continues to file reimbursement claims, and yet has been continually rejected. He's asked that perhaps he could send a hard copy to the system and invoices to HR, and that was refused, and he was suggested nicely to continue to file online. So there are they will not accept his offer, and they tell him to file electronically. Each effort, as a result of an error, 3 months later, still have been not reimbursed for covered hospital stay. In another instance, Sally, who is 85 years old, used to call the system office to get help, to help unscramble some of the procedure to pay an invoice or to seek reimbursement on a claim. Not anymore. Their best advice now is to go online and fill out the claim form. As you can see, there is a repetition of responses to filing claims and asking for reimbursement. It was expected that the system office would look out for us and guide us through what is seemingly a routine process. This does not seem to be the case with Sally. At 85, she fell and broke her collarbone. After 3 weeks in the hospital, She still could not manage everyday tasks like dressing herself, doing household chores, or to go to the bathroom without assistance. Even though the doctor recommended more time in the hospital, an insurance company wrote her a nice letter explaining that the algorithm they use indicated that a person of her stature should be able to do the things that she claims she cannot do, even though she has a doctor's slip saying you can't do these types of things at this time. So filling out a form on a computer is not something that she can readily concentrate on doing, although she tries diligently, and she has asked for assistance and help through the system and has received very little in that regard. So she has turned to her mentors, her Maine Education Association retired group, to get that kind of assistance. And we've done whatever we can to assist. But it would,
Could I ask you to wrap it up if you've passed this?
I have one
Sure.
sentence left. It would be best if someone in the system office could guide people through the process of submitting a claim or a request for a reimbursement. These people have dedicated their lives to the university, and it'd be nice if the university could dedicate a few minutes to answer their people's questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can assure you that the university will do just that. And if you can get those individuals to contact Carolyn Dorsey, we'll make certain that they get an immediate response. Next, we have Lisa Feldman.
My name is Lisa Feldman. After working in various capacities from library clerk to Latin instructor on the Orono campus, I went off to do other things, then returned to UMS to spend about 15 years working on the Bangor campus of UMA, the best campus. I serve as a member of MEA Retired's Health Committee. I'd like to thank the trustees for undertaking to survey its retirees on retiree health plan issues. We hope you'll get a good response and that you listen carefully to the feedback you get. Since UMS adopted the current two-track system for choosing retiree health insurance plans, we've wished we had more detailed information on how the new system is working for our fellow retirees. We've had anecdotal reports like the ones Gary mentioned of difficulties of various kinds. And these difficulties range from navigating the sign-up process to getting the insurance plan of choice to pay for things it says it covers. We hear in particular of problems in dealings with Aon Alight, problems that seem rooted in poor training and understaffing. My fellow retiree and fellow health committee member, Gail Wartell, who couldn't be here today, emailed you an example from her own experience, and I encourage you to read it and think, I wouldn't want this to happen to me. I compare this kind of frustrating interaction to the communication and assistance we used to get from UMS human resources and staff when we were still in the workforce. As a health committee member, I compare these difficulties to the kind of help and support that fellow MEA retirees who spent their working lives in the public school system get with their retiree insurance from the MEA Benefits Trust. We know the university system can and should do better by us. Please remember, if we had not gotten up and done our jobs day after day, year after year, for whole collective decades of yesterdays, you would not have a university system to supervise today. Our suggestion for a simple first step is to appoint, train, and publicize to retirees a designated retiree ombudsman, because this could be someone who already works in UMS Human Resources. This would cost little or nothing As veteran UMS employees, we are always mindful of budgetary constraints. Having just a little help and support from the system office would mark a big improvement in the quality of life for many of your retirees. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we did get that email, so thank you. George Miller.
Good morning. I was Director of Advising at UMF for 15 years, now retired. I'm here to tell you you're not doing enough to support student success. The graduation rates for the University of Maine system are below the national average, and the system dropout rate is much higher. On average, about 1 in 3 students who start their college education at a UMS campus will be out of college without a degree 6 years later. Many of those dropouts have student debt. Many are from low-income families. Is that acceptable? It shouldn't be. The national average dropout rate for 4-year public universities is about 10 percentage points better. With enrollments dropping in recent years, system universities have been accepting more students who are less qualified, so we can expect the dropout rate to get even worse unless significant steps are taken. The Board of Trustees, you need to do 3 things to improve graduation and dropout rates. First is to make it student success a #1 priority. Second, get more money. The system has been severely underfunded since 2008, and it shows. The state appropriation in 2008 was $183 million, which with inflation would be about $260 million today. But the current state appropriation is a lot less than that. You need to be much more aggressive and persistent with the state. And there's tuition. Maine's tuition is among the lowest in New England, which would be great, except that Maine's graduation rates are also among the lowest in New England. Student success comes from strong advising, financial aid, good classes, faculty mentoring, engaged student life, tutoring, counseling, health facilities, and a host of other features that all cost money. If the state won't pony up, you got to raise tuition. And last but not least, listen to your employees when they tell you what they need to improve student success. You don't need to hire consultants. You do need to listen to your employees and act on their recommendations. That is not happening now. 2 years ago, the system advising group said unanimously that they need degree planning software, and with the right tool, they could make a measurable improvement in graduation rates. More than 1 year ago, the RFP committee for that software made its recommendation, and the recommendation was approved by the system provosts. Since then, there has been no action, no announcement, not even a response from system leadership. That needs to change. You can and should make a beginning and take a first step in the right direction by that degree planning software recommended by the RFP committee. Give your students and their advisors the tool they need to make a difference and start making student success a real priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Anthony Pina.
Hi, folks. I'm a 4th-year physics PhD here at UMaine. And I came here for 2 main reasons. One of those was my advisor, and the other was the community here. I'm really fortunate to have an advisor and a research group that have been tremendously supportive during my time here, helping my growth as an instructor, a researcher, and during my first 2 years as a student taking courses. And there's no way I could be here pursuing this degree, doing this really exciting work that I do, and being a part of the community here without them. The unfortunate part is that not all of my time here has been so bright. While the academics have been largely what I expected out of being a graduate student, the conditions of my employment at UMaine have left a lot to be desired. In my time here, I've had no choice but to utilize food pantries, government assistance, and other resources in order to feed myself, keep a roof over my head, and to make sure that I can keep all of my teeth. I expected a PhD to come with challenges, and that was actually part of the draw. I was really interested in that, but I didn't expect so many of them would be related to meeting my basic needs. So last fall, when I came across a group of graduate students from all these different departments across campus who are interested in using our collective voice to speak with you, the administration. I was really excited. I had found this little gem within our UMaine community of people who were like-minded. And it's one where we all believe that the best avenue for taking care of the people here who are graduate students would be the UMaine system agreeing to the fair process of verifying that the majority of graduate workers have signed authorization cards in favor of forming a union. It's something that would really allow us to give our all to the work that happens on this campus and support one another as members of an academic community. Over the weekend, some of our organizers spoke with the AFM Executive Board, and at the end of this statement, I had like to deliver to you a letter. I should have enough copies for all of you that they've signed, calling for you to do just that. Doing so would provide graduate workers a permanent seat at the table where decisions are made that affect our daily lives, and show that they as people, along with their ideas, their values, and their hard work are truly valued by the UMaine system. So thanks for your time. And I really hope that we'll soon be collaborating for the betterment of the UMaine system.
Thank you. Lauren Woods.
Hello, trustees. My name is Lauren Woods, and many of you may recognize me from last night's meeting.
We do.
I debated all week about whether or not I would speak to you today. Yesterday, I really wanted to showcase my research and feel good about sharing my experiences as a graduate student worker with you. Instead, I left feeling frustrated and dehumanized. Multiple times throughout the night, I heard and received comments from those in attendance, not only acknowledging, but openly admitting that graduate student workers are not paid a livable wage. What really upset me is that these people were not making those comments in terms of wanting to make a positive change, but that they were joking about it. People made comments about how students should be taking home leftover cake, how we should be taking advantage of our advisors buying us a drink, how they won't stand in the way of a graduate student getting free food because they know we aren't paid well. Last night, President Franny Mundy highlighted the well-being initiative being implemented across our campuses. We heard moving testimonies from students at UMaine Machias, people who have endured numerous obstacles in life and took the courage to vocalize those struggles to you all. I come to you today to vocalize the struggles of graduate student workers at the University of Maine. People who are also struggling with making ends meet, struggling to pay for rent and groceries, struggling to find affordable childcare so that they can receive an education, struggling with increasing debt due to insufficient healthcare. Some people may say, oh, that's just how it is in grad school, but I say that's unacceptable. Struggling to survive should not be some sort of rite of passage for those trying to receive a higher education. If UMaine seriously wants to improve the well-being of their students, then they should be willing to recognize that the majority of graduate student workers are in support of a union. I really am grateful for all of the opportunities UMaine has provided me. It's been an honor to work in my department and very fulfilling to conduct cutting-edge research. Everything looks great for graduate workers when you see videos and photos of them flying around in helicopters and standing on glaciers with the president. And now I can't deny that is pretty awesome, but what you don't see behind that is how excited I am that I finally got to save money because I didn't have to pay for groceries or co-pays for my therapy appointments and medications while I was in the field. What you don't see behind that is over 45% of my income goes to rent. What you don't see behind that is me not getting paid on time, so then I have to use my credit card to buy personal supplies and gear before my field season starts. Graduate workers deserve to live a decent life. We all came to UMaine to pursue a higher education with hopes to have a higher quality of life. It is hard to sustain that hope when living each day in survival mode. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you all, as Trustee McMahon would say, put on your listening ears and hear what we have to say.
Thank you, Lauren, for your
Thank you.
candor. I apologize in advance. I think it's Sarab Boldagi.
Board of Trustees, My name is Sora Boldaji. I am a current graduate student in the Master's of Science of Teaching program, where my research is focused on ethnomathematics and how to use that in the way we teach math in our classrooms here in Maine. And I stand before you as a current graduate worker who, along with the majority of graduate students, have signed authorization cards in support of the formation of a union. I'm here to ask you to end this lack of care and representation that we face in the university system, and recognize our intent to form a union as you have honored the 6 other unions present in the university system. I'm here asking you to care, to look at graduate workers and see what they go through in terms of insufficient healthcare, a total lack of dental and vision care, as well as the way in which the university continually mishandles and mistreats affairs regarding graduate workers. We have shown our intent and our dedication to the formation of a union, and we ask that you act in a timely manner to accept our decision as workers to unionize. The decision to wait until an election would cause much unneeded pain and suffering amongst many graduate workers who are continuously struggling to get by at this very moment. As we speak, graduate workers are suffering, and it is in your hands to support us and in this strife through acknowledging our card campaign and not taking this to election and waiting for someone else to handle it, or causing further pain and suffering that could be avoided by just accepting the card count. Thank you.
Thank you. Meredith Waters.
Okay. Hi, friends. Oh, trustees. My name is Meredith Waters. I am an undergraduate student in political science here. And today I want to talk about some legislation that's coming to the State House that I think is incredibly important and relevant to you guys. There is a proposed bill to take the number of Board of Trustees from 16, where it currently is, to 25. The addition of 9 members, having 10 of those members be from the University of Maine campuses. So each campus, a grad student representative and a law school representative. And I think that that is vital and important to the functioning of our Board of Trustees. 48% of the UMaine budget is paid for by student tuition. I think that we should have 48%-ish of the seats at the table, because the decisions being made here impact our education, and that's the education that we fund. We pay the price and we should get to make the decisions. And I think that there's no better experienced people than the people that have the lived experience of attending these universities every single day. I remember in 2019 when the University of Maine systems lobbied to keep students out of a paid time off bill, student workers. I don't want you guys to lobby against this. I think that this is important. I think it's really important that students get a seat at the table and a say in their education. I think it'll make the University of Maine systems better and improve the lives of students. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Meredith. Tamara Benson.
Hello. And thank you for your time. My name is Tamara Benson, and I'm a 4th-year undergraduate student at the University of Maine in Orono. I'm here today to call on the university administration and Board of Trustees to voluntarily recognize the University of Maine Graduate Student Union. I'm going to tell you a little story. Last year, I was taking a class instructed by both a professor and a TA. Halfway through the semester, that professor fell ill and needed to temporarily step down from her role and take necessary medical leave, which I will point out should be an option for all of the workers at UMaine. But that's not the point of this story. Our TA stepped up and took over the entire class for the sake of her students, which she did not get paid extra to do. That TA did not have sufficient pay or sufficient access to good health care, and yet she stepped up because she cares about her students. Do you know who I saw at the rally for grad workers' rights on Friday? The professor that got sick. Because her entire class would have come screeching to a halt if that TA had not taken on the weight of the world for the benefit of her students. And this is not a unique story. Graduate workers are some of the most underserved and exploited people in the entire University of Maine system. You know it, I know it, and the grad students behind me know it better than anyone. I don't know how many of these grad students you've spoken directly with, but they are some of the most determined, passionate, and capable people I know. And I know a lot of people. They are trying to work with you. They have shown you that they have overwhelming support amongst graduate workers with a stunning over 500 cards signed in just a month. And I can promise you that it is in your best interest to work with them. I don't mean to sound threatening, but they will not stop. This is something this is not something you can make go away with a tiny raise or a statement about how much you love your grad workers. They are unionizing because they deserve autonomy and a seat at the table for now and the future, and undergraduate students will always support them. Firstly, because they are human and they deserve dignity and respect. And secondly, because our undergraduate experiences here at the University of Maine would be nothing without the grad workers who make the university thrive. We will not stop until you recognize the union. Thank you.
Remy Kehogan.
Hello, my name is Remy Gohegan, and I'm a first-year biomedical science PhD student. 5 years ago, I realized that I wanted to pursue a different, more fulfilling career and enrolled at UMaine to complete a second bachelor's degree as a non-traditional student. During my first year, I enrolled in Genome 1, Dirt to DNA, and had the incredible opportunity to image a novel virus that I had isolated using an electron microscope. When my virus came into view under the scope, I knew I wanted to conduct biomedical research. Through the incredible mentorship I received from dedicated faculty members in my program and a lot of hard work, I was accepted into the Graduate School of Biomedical Science and Engineering this year. With great excitement, I began my lab rotations and branched out, meeting more peers from different backgrounds, all motivated to make new discoveries and dedicate themselves to research. However, as the semester progressed, a common theme emerged from our conversations. These hardworking, bright graduate workers were already struggling. Instead of focusing on their students and coursework, many voiced concerns about the rising cost of food, rent, and other basic necessities. Some expressed feeling unsupported and unseen as they went months without timely pay. Even worse, some confided that they were now struggling to afford medical care. These are the harsh realities of graduate student life at our flagship institution. At first, I was shocked. How could the same university that prides itself on our recently acquired R1 status leave its dedicated workers housing insecure and reliant on food stamps with mounting medical debt? Why did my peers, bound by contracts excluding them from seeking supplemental employment, need to consider donating plasma to afford the rising costs of living? Why are we not afforded the dignity of living wages and adequate healthcare coverage? I ask these questions to all of you because I'm concerned about the future of our institution. I know that we can do better together, and it starts with the university voluntarily recognizing our graduate student union. Through the incredible work of dedicated graduate workers that are all right behind me, we have collected over 500 signatures representing a majority of graduate students pledging support for unionization. We want a seat at the table to help make the University of Maine a better place for everyone. Let's protect our R1 status by creating a more supportive working environment at UMaine. Together, we can build a campus that attracts new graduate students and more funding opportunities. There's a wave of graduate students unionizing all around the country, pushing for a better future. We invite you to be a part of this new future with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we ask our last speaker, two of you have mentioned timely payments, which is of course a concern. And we've had a little sidebar here, and Vice Chancellor Dorsey will be looking into that because that's very worrisome, and we'll see if we can at least resolve that quickly. And our last speaker is Jim McClymer.
Good morning, Jim McClymer, president of AFM. It's interesting to think about what we've heard about today, but you can see some kind of bookends. We first started off with our retirees, people who have ended their careers. And as you all know, things happen as you get older. It's harder to read certain things, print gets smaller, and you can imagine those that are a little older may have a hard time managing these newfangled things called computers. It's easy to just make fun of them at times. You've heard the phrase, okay, boomer, it may have been used against some of you. It has been used against me, I will admit. But people need assistance to transition. There are things that become hard. So the key word I think here is empathy. We need to respect those who have retired, who need a little bit of help to have dignity. At the other end, we have our new oncoming professionals, the graduate students, who are obviously having a very, very difficult time. And we all know that you have the legal right to require more steps in the process for them to form a union. And we're all asking you, and you have a formal letter from the AFM Executive Committee asking you not to go through that extra step, disrespecting them, recognize their card count, make sure it's legitimate, do your due diligence, be fair, do the right thing. And if they have enough cards, recognize their union, negotiate with them to make things better for all. I also want to point out another, when the university changed the health insurance without involving us, we discovered there were some very old retirees under an old pension plan, and the stories they told brought me to tears. It might be useful if you could see if any of these kind of retirees are still among us and see if they are getting, if perhaps their pensions could be boosted to a more living wage. I think some of them are having extremely difficult times. They don't have a voice. So maybe we could look at those as well as we basically use the word of the day, empathy, to imagine how others are doing. So thank you for everything.
Thank you. Thank you all. As you know, our schedule is pretty hectic today and we don't have a chance to engage with all of you, but please be assured we've heard your comments and we'll take them very, very seriously in our next steps. So thank you very much. Let me quickly go to the chair's report again, thanking the University of Maine for hosting this great meeting. It's that time of year, just a few updates from our end. We will have a nominating committee for our own board leadership convene soon. I thank Trustee McMahon for chairing that and thank Trustee Martin and Trustee Flood for agreeing to serve on it. So that's terrific. We'll also begin the Chancellor review evaluation, the annual evaluation. And we expect to have the governor's appointments for new Board of Trustee members any day now. That's in the works and we anticipate that happening fairly soon. The other personnel issue I think we want to turn to is the UMA search. Obviously, the search has been progressing very well. We have 4 finalists and I think Chair Cates can update us.
Well, thank you. The UMaine Search Committee, which includes several people in this room, including Trustee Flood and Trustee Dobson and Rowena is with us as well. We've been meeting now for several months, and this is the big week because this week our 4 semifinalists are visiting campus, both in Augusta and in Bangor. We've got 4 very good candidates who are part of the process at this point. Dr. Jennifer Cushman, who is the Chancellor of Penn State Beaver and part of the Penn State system. Dr. Roxanne Gonzalez Walker, who's a provost and vice president at New Mexico Highlands University. Jason King, who's the chief compliance and ethics officer at the University of Texas system. And Raymond Rice, the president of the University of Maine at Presque Isle. And for those of you who are available there, if you look at the UMA website, there's a list of all the events which are going on, opportunities for people to come and meet these candidates. We then will, after that, next week, meet and go through our evaluations of the candidates, present our findings to Chancellor Malloy, whose decision it will then be to make a selection. So it's going really well. Committee's been working great together, and we're almost there.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for all your work. It's impressive. Okay. Let me now turn to our round robin with the presidents to get a little snapshot of what's happening on each of the campuses. And I think I'll start with Ray Rice because I remembered his name from the University of Maine at Presque Isle. You still remind me of somebody else.
Hear that a lot. Thank you, Chair Riley. We've had a very good spring semester at the University of Maine at Presque Isle. I'll start with some great athletic information. Both of our men and women's basketball teams went to the NAC semifinals and competed wonderfully, beating a couple of private school rivals. That's always welcome. Also, our baseball and softball teams returned safely from trips down south and are now competing where there isn't 10 inches of snow up in the county, down in Massachusetts and other places. As you know, we've had very strong looking potential prospective enrollment numbers for the spring, which include our traditional age students, but also continued growth in our competency-based education programming for our Your Pace students, which are in the state of Maine and across the country, doing some really wonderful work there. Looking forward for a graduation ceremony that for the first time will be a hybrid ceremony. We'll have our usual in-person ceremony and welcoming some distinguished guests to that ceremony, which will be a live event, but we'll also have a virtual event that we'll release about a week later, which will include selections from the live event, but also allows all of our online students, which are rapidly becoming a very large portion of our graduates, to be able to contribute slides and personal information so they have a full experience about a week later. There are some other institutions that do those kind of hybrid ceremonies as well. So that's a big effort from our marketing department and IT department to make sure that comes off. And then we're also very pleased to have a spring ball coming up, which includes a pie throwing contest. And I believe I've been nominated, or a lot of people have put in markers to see if I can get pied at that event. So I'm looking forward to that one in particular.
And that will, of course, be recorded as well. I hope.
I'm sure that will be recorded and live streamed on YouTube or something. Yes. So
Thank you. Can we go to Fort Kent, President Hadid? Good morning. Good morning. Hello? Okay, there it is. There you go.
Our attention most recently has been focused on recruitment of students for fall of 2023. We are very pleased with the increase of matriculated students, over 50% for our fall enrollment. We also have our Scholars Symposium coming up on April 26th, and we are planning for a great day of both sessions and poster sessions by a number of our students. And of course, as Ray said, preparing for commencement. Thank you.
Thank you. Farmington, President McDonald.
Thank you. Last time I spoke about our ski and basketball team, the success that they've had. This time I would like to focus on some other aspects of the university, particularly our arts program. In theater, we had a wonderful play on Frankenstein. And one of our representatives here, Aidan Mulrooney, was one of the actors in that. And so it's all preparing him for a career in law. We also have an art show going on now that is on climate change, which is part of a art and science interdisciplinary activity, which is one of the things that we are highlighting at the university, that we're trying to get more and more across the discipline activities, and this is just one of them. And we also have our visiting writers series. We will have on the final writer coming to campus will be a poet, Arisa White, and so that's been a very successful program. Turning to academics, we have launched our part-time counseling program. We have a full-time counseling program, but this is a master's degree in counseling. And so we're starting to recruit students for that part-time program. We've completed the 4-credit to 3-credit transition, and now students are signing up for the 3-credit program in the fall. And that, of course, has allowed us to move into articulation agreements with the community colleges, and that is moving forward successfully. Like Fort Kent, we will also have a symposium day in April where students will get to showcase their work. Chancellor Malloy will be joining us that day. And then finally, in terms of efficiency, we have changed our academic structure, and we're moving from 9 divisions and 9 chairs to 4 chairs beginning in July.
Big move. Thank you. University of Maine at Augusta, President Seekus.
So 2 things on the slate for us today. Number one, our women's basketball team was invited for their conference. So just keeping up with the Joneses over on the other side there. They won the first round, lost the second to the ultimate national champions. But the story here, let me just say, is that the University of Maine at Augusta had 9 national All-American recipients between our men's and women's basketball team. That's about 35% of our actual 2 basketball teams. The second one is that over March break, 5 UMA biology majors joined undergraduates from across Maine in a week-long course entitled Bridging Disciplines at Mount Desert Islands Biological Institute. The course was a collaborative effort by Dr. Ju-Young Shim from UMA and Dr. Doug Curry from USM, also with Dr. Jane Disney from MD-IBL. They are joined by faculty from UMA, USM, UMPI, UMFK, and guest speakers from Bates College, University of Maine, Maine DEP, and the T.H. Chan Harvard University School of Public Health. The entire program was free, tuition, housing, food for students, and the course aimed to create a community of learners interested in toxicology and the impact of chemical contaminants on human health. So very collaborative story, and I would just say the 2 stellar things from UMA today. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And President McDonald mentioned Aiden's performance. He does look much more relaxed now, but it reminds me that I've been remiss because we have a new student rep to the board who was this is his first meeting. So I'd like to welcome Andrew Steele from USM. And let us move around the table to the University of Maine, and President Farini Mundy, who, if you can't see it, has on Maine blue fingernail polish, which is quite something. It will.
I mean, if I just keep talking.
Yep.
And we appreciate the chance to update. We've also had a lot of chance to the meeting, but just a couple of things that I'd like to highlight. Our English professor Morgan Talty, an acclaimed author, has added another award to his repertoire, the National Book Critics Circle Award for his collection of short stories, Night of the Living Res. That's on top of several other awards after this work. So we're very, very proud that he is here. The softball renovation will be completed, and we will have a grand opening on March 31st. Of the Alphon funded facility. That's the first of our renovations and new work going on with those dollars for the Alphon Foundation. And the slot pavilion, Captain Slot, Professor here, will be also honored at that event. We are also working, like all of our colleagues across the system, on enrollment with a number of innovations that our interim Vice President for Enrollment Management, Jones, has brought to us, including calling campaign, very, very robust. Accepted Students Day, the first of which was held this weekend. And so that's all been extremely exciting to bring a full campus-wide effort for the recruitment activities. And we are proud to announce the new dean, the new executive dean of the Maine Business School, Jason Hunt.
Great, busy. Thank you. And last but not least, Dean Softly.
Thank you very much. So I have 3 things today. I can't speak with this group without talking about the building, which you have supported. You have changed the career trajectories of so many students in supporting this building. It is open, it is humming. There is so much competition for the wonderful spaces in the building. We've had to institute a request for space for places like the Innovation Conference Room, all of the wonderful places in the building. It's absolutely been amazing. The Chancellor did his spring visit in the new building and heard from faculty and students about how they feel valued for the first time in a long time. And your investment in that building is paying off in ways that are just remarkable to talk about. We had our first law review symposium. Trustee Loring helped us put all of that together, and it was vibrant, very well received, and it's been an amazing thing to watch this building open. The recruitment efforts at Maine Law and across the graduate and professional center programs are really benefiting from the building. In law schools, applications to law schools are down about 4% across the nation. They are up 3% at Maine Law, and we're very excited about that and about the opportunity to bring in more students. The two other quick student pieces, our students who did such a great job with oral arguments were invited by the Supreme Judicial Court in the state of Maine to provide arguments before the court. They did an amazing job. They made us proud. And of course, the current Chief Justice is a graduate of the University of Maine School of Law, so that helped. And finally, the University of Maine School of Law has been in the competition for the International Helsinki Privacy Law Competition now 3 years running. This year, they were finalists again, losing in the very last round by very few points to Istanbul. The University of Maine School of Law is really making a name for itself in privacy law across the globe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. These are great. This is always a great way to start a meeting with all the good news that's going on. And I apologize to Chair Cates because I took him out of order and he probably wasn't ready, so he needs an addendum.
Me, I forgot to mention two other people on our committee who are here, very important members of the committee, Rosa Rodon, and maybe I did mention Rosa, but Patrick Cheek as well, who represents faculty. So great group. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And President Rice.
With your and Grace, I was wondering if I could mention something about Maine School of Science and Mathematics.
Sure.
They're announcing a new executive director. I've been chairing their search. We're very pleased to have an executive director. As you know, so many of the students go into the University of Maine system, particularly engineering is the greatest, I think, number of students go into that program than any institution in any program that those graduates go to. So we're announcing Rob Constantine as going out right now as the next executive director of Maine School of Science and Mathematics.
Great, thank you. Thank you. But we've been doing some internal work to make sure our policies and procedures are up to date. Barbara Reed Alexander is chairing our bylaws committee and will give us an update.
Just to let the board and others know, the committee has had one meeting due to the incredible amount of work going on with strategic planning and other budget related matters. We have not yet completed our work. We have another meeting planned for early April. It has been, our work has been mostly done under the excellent supervision and direction from Ellen at the system office and Paul, our general counsel. So we'll have something for you this summer. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Speaking of Ellen, we have had some sad news, and that is that Heather Massey is leaving us to take on a wonderful new position, and we want to thank her very much for all her work. And I think Ellen has a few words to say.
Thank you, Chair Riley.
Done.
Hello. Thank you, Chair Riley. Heather Massey has been with the University of Maine system since 2012. She had several years in the facilities department here at Orono and has been with the board office since March of 18. She has accepted a position as the executive director of Sarah's House in Holden, which is very near and dear to her heart. She leaves a huge hole in the board office. She was instrumental in pivoting the board meetings to a remote platform during COVID and has grown in that capacity and has been my right-hand person. We will miss her, but we also congratulate her and wish her well on her new endeavors. Thank you, Heather.
Heather, you can run, but you can't hide. So stay in touch, and that's a fabulous, fabulous new opportunity for you. So best of luck. Let's move on now to the Chancellor's report.
So I have a few things to say. Jeff, do you want to go up to the podium? We do have news to report both on the NECHI visit and their communications, which will be published on Wednesday at approximately 12 noon, I think. But I want to single out Jeff's extraordinary work on unified accreditation as well as the unified catalog and ask him to update those. But before he says a word, I want everyone to understand the tremendous work that he and other people on committees and associated with the visit did to make sure of what we are about to share with you. Jeff.
Thanks, Chancellor. So as I think all the trustees know, Vice Chancellor Dorsey, the Chancellor, and I visited with the NECHI Commission in Massachusetts earlier this month. And with unusual speed, NECHI prepared and delivered to us just within the last couple of days, the culminating letter, the letter that wraps up our 2+ year comprehensive evaluation cycle for our first in the nation unified accreditation model and its early implementation. I'm very pleased to say that we received a letter that is overwhelmingly positive across the board. There were no red flags. There are no follow-up visits entailed. We are on a normal visiting cycle for the next 10 years, meaning in 5 years, we'll have a report with no visit, and in 10 years, we'll have a follow-up comprehensive evaluation visit. And if I'm still doing this in 10 years, I will have made a wrong career choice. However, I'm pleased to say, very pleased to say that I've actually been an accreditation officer now for 9.5 years between the University of Maine and the system. If you scale these letters from 1 being the worst kind of letter you can get to 10 being the best, this letter is a 10 in my humble estimation. We will be asked in 2 years to provide a progress report on the implementation of our soon-to-be completed new system-wide strategic plan. That's normal course for where we are in that stage of the planning. We'll also be asked for our 5th year interim report 5 years out to report updates in 4 areas. And those 4 areas are the ongoing implementation of the Faculty Governance Council and its work. That's number 1. Number 2, our continued progress in achieving areas of alignment and integration around administrative processes throughout the system to create efficiencies and improve what we do. Number 3, our success in implementing our diversity, equity, and inclusivity goals, both at the system level and at the campus level. And then number 4, our progress in facilities planning, which is really NECHI's way of saying ongoing infrastructure projects and facilities projects. We had a lengthy conversation about this infrastructure planning and our progress there with the commission. But again, other than that, no marks against us, no red flags, no criticisms in the letter. We have a clean and complete and categorically successful comprehensive evaluation progress visit, preparation, and process that has now come to a close. We remain continued in our unified accreditation, and we are full steam ahead. As the Chancellor noted, we will share the letter that the Commission sent us in a system-wide message from the Chancellor this Wednesday. You'll be able to read it for yourselves, but we wanted to share the good news this morning.
If I could just interrupt for 1 second, I'd also like to call on Carolyn Dorsey. You can do it from here to touch on the portion of the meeting that you were there for.
Certainly. Thank you, Chancellor. So I was in attendance to assist if there was anything on the general report that was offered, but more specifically on competency-based education, because as many of you are aware, that is something that only at this time UMPE has been able to offer. And what UMPE was requesting is that we could have the opportunity to not have to go back to NECHI with all of the different new program approvals that we would be seeking moving forward with CBE. They offered that general approval so that Ray Rice and the team at UMPE can move forward any types of programming that we currently have in the system. If it's something new, it would require an approval as normal. But so it is a really good positive statement for UMPE and giving them the ability to continue broadening and expanding CBE. And while I have the microphone, I would like to just say quickly that I do certainly understand why NECHI has minimal attendance at these meetings. It's very formal and they have quite a bit of work to get done in a couple of days. But I wish that everyone could have been there, because when you're in the room and you can sit around, it's a table about this size, quite a few representatives from across New England. When you can see how clearly impressed they are with the work that the University of Maine system, that the system leadership, the presidents, the folks on the campus have done to bring unified accreditation forward, it is truly humbling. And to hear the Chancellor and Jeff respond to their questions and the leadership that they so obviously put their faith in this transition. So I was very, very pleased to be able to join them and hear all of the comments, and I look forward to the final report. But I hope that you all understand that this was really, truly a magnificent undertaking. I'm very proud of the system.
And from there, I will descend to 4 relatively non-exciting updates, very brief, all of them, but they're my unified accreditation, unified catalog update for this morning. Number 1, I shared with the trustees in November that we were going to use a tracking mechanism that we previously used to track progress on accreditation related matters for our strategic planning process as well. We're now reversing that because we have an implementation plan built into the strategic plan, which the trustees will be, I know, looking at very closely in the coming month or 2 months. So we're going to take the NECHI items, build them right into the implementation for the strategic plan, and make the strategic plan implementation tracking system the broader governing system, if that makes sense. And then 3 quick updates for you about unified catalog initiatives. Number 1, fulfilling a longstanding interest of the chancellors and others, including several of the presidents. In February, we sent an email to all students with a course search function built into the email saying, you can use this link to look for summer 2023 course offerings at all of our universities. As some of you know, that our current Main Street system has some limitations around the number of screens you have to click to. If you're a student at one of our universities, to find course offerings at another university. So with some wonderful help from a team of our IT specialists, we put together this course search and sent out the email. We got some feedback immediately from the registrars saying, here are ways you could improve this course search mechanism, which we've taken account of and will use the next time we push this out. The eventual goal, however, is to make it possible for all students on all campuses in advance of every registration period to have an understanding of what's being offered system-wide by all of our universities. One of the central goals of Unified Catalog Initiative has been to increase visibility and searchability of future course offerings. And I'm pleased to say we're on the road toward that with this first step, and we will improve the process and use it going forward. The second update is the Unified Catalog Working Group will meet on Thursday of this week with a group of students who have had some kind of transfer experience with us. Some of those students will be students who've transferred in from one of our community colleges, students who've transferred from one of our universities to another, or students who've joined us from outside the University of Maine system coming into one of our universities. And then finally, we'll also be speaking with students who routinely take courses on one or more other campuses within the system and transfer the credits back to their home institution. We've decided that as we continue to look at transfer in particular, we won't have much legitimacy as a working group if we don't talk to the students themselves. So we're really looking forward to that conversation. And I should note that it was the registrars who helped us identify these students, and the students we'll be speaking with are all volunteers to come and talk to us for an hour and give us their experiences about transfer so we can improve that process for them and others as they move forward. And then finally, I wanted to share an update about something that I first shared with the trustees in September. And this update really speaks, once I get to the end of it, it's very brief, to the ongoing importance of the Repaving Main Street initiative. And I would just like to say, the trustees and the Chancellor and Ryan and others who are involved in the decision to support that initiative have absolutely made the right choice, and it's an ongoing right choice for us. Long story short, we're trying to take a process that is currently paper-based for students who want to study at one of our other universities and bring the credits back to their home university. We're trying to take that paper-based process and move it online, and move it online in a way that the existing approval chain and signature chain is consistent for each university's current practice. The constraints of our current PeopleSoft student information system have made what really should be a 3-4 week project, something that is now on month number 9. We do believe we have a solution in front of us, thanks to the tireless work of 2 members of David Demers' IT staff who've been supporting this effort since last summer, and the ongoing help of a group of about 35 staff, professional advisors, registrars, and others from all over the system. But I want to emphasize for the trustees and for everyone in the room, the achievement of the Repaving Main Street initiative, when that initiative is completed, dovetailing with the ongoing work of the Unified Catalog Initiative, will make things that should be simple actually simple for our students, and make processes that should be seamless truly seamless for our students. And this is another example of where the board's investment in the Repaving Main Street initiative is going to have a massive return for students current and future. So I'll just share that update by way of, we will get to the end on this work we're doing. We will figure this out, but this and many other similar technological obstacles that we face will be erased when we achieve the final stages of the Repaving Main Street work. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of the trustees may have about these updates.
Thank you. Any questions? Trustee Alexander.
Is there any chance you would be comfortable giving some kind of estimate as to when these marvelous things might actually be implemented?
So there's a phased timeline, and Trustee Alexander, I can send you a link to the current timeline on the Repaving Main Street website. They will come in stages. I think I really want to just emphasize the point that along the way, but especially at the end of the road, when all the switches are flipped and we change over to a radically improved Main Street environment, some of the current impediments we face that are technological in nature as opposed to process or procedural in nature will be resolved, and it will be well worth the time and effort expended.
I'm sorry. What is the timeline? That's all I'm asking. Can you just refresh my memory?
Final phase of the student information system upgrade, I believe, is 2025, 26 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an aggressive timeline given the amount of work that will go into this.
If I might just share with Jeff, I will remind you that previously we had already entered into an agreement amongst the universities on how to share the tuition dollars associated with courses taken at various universities, not other than your home university. So we're very proud of that. I think that I do want to say this, that we will see incremental change as we go forward. So the reference to a calendar layout, which Jeff clearly did not memorize. Nor did I, is important. And I think that the point that I would like to make with respect to unified accreditation and unified catalog work, as well as repaving Main Street, is it will be paying dividends on an ongoing basis as we move towards final implementation. But I would also say to you that we have an exciting group of presidents serving. This is a collaborative effort that we are all engaged in and moving forward. And quite frankly, as trustees, you should be proud of your presidents and their ability to address these issues and do that in a unified way itself.
Any other questions? Trustee Martin.
I just have a comment. This is so exciting today to be at this point because all of our work since I've been on the board and a little bit before has come to this point. And at times this goal didn't seem attainable. It was a long and winding road. And I think a lot of people that have been involved in this should pat themselves on the back. This is really a tremendous, tremendous work.
Great, thank you. Great, thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much.
We've touched on other things. I know that we all continue to have concerns about the size of the student population that we're serving, and I gave update yesterday to a number of folks around where we are. We are basically, as of this day, in a relatively close alignment with where we were in 2019 and 2020. We have a number of additional efforts that will be undertaken, including a second phase of decision-making advice going out to students that have been accepted by any of our universities. That will play itself out between April 1st and May 1st when the majority of the commitments that we receive will have been made. But we also are in the process of evolving how we approach students as opposed to waiting for them to approach us with respect to application to one of our universities, and specifically implementing an immediate outreach to those students who are taking courses at any one of our universities while they're still in high school. We have that information, and we believe that we can act on admissions using that information very effectively in an outreach program. So those additional efforts will be undertaken almost immediately.
Conclusion. Great, thank you. Any questions for the Chancellor? Seeing none, let's move on to Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, John Freeney-Mundy.
Thank you, Trustee Riley. Good morning, everybody. Reporting today on research funding, as we often do, but with a very particular focus for the board today on the notion of competitive awards from external sponsors. And this is a subcategory of what we do with external funding. Where faculty members and staff and students write proposals to a program that has some fixed dollars attached to it with the federal government, and where then those proposals are reviewed by experts from around the country and the winning proposals are selected. So it's a competitive process. It's a little bit different from the ways that earmarks work or that some of the congressional appropriations funding works, although those projects often also require the writing of a proposal. But the competitive awards in many ways are I think, some of the most important work that we do for lots of reasons. When faculty write those proposals, they are reviewed by a national set of experts, which means we're getting the name and reputation and good ideas of the university out in front of a national audience. And that has lots of ramifications. So my focus today is to just dive a little more fully into this process of competitive award work across the system, where it's happening across the system. And what we'd like to do in the Office of the VCRI in the coming year is to really focus on this area in particular to try to help people across the system have even more success. Because a unified, connected R&D support system for our whole set of universities really is vital to the future of Maine. And I've used this slide with you perhaps before, but these pieces all fit together. The notion that you have to have the basic research, we heard some about that yesterday from the group from Aaron Putnam and George Denton's team. They are doing fundamental work that is not necessarily tomorrow going to make a difference in the state of Maine, but as it gets turned into various kinds of experimental development and then innovations or strategies are derived from it, the wider use that then happens does make a difference for our state. And it's really important for our whole system to have this healthy ecosystem of basic experimental and then innovation and wider use work, because that is what will help ultimately drive the production of talent, the preparation of people to do the work at all of these different stages, and also to help the economy of Maine. So this graph, the print is small, but the big idea here, this is UMaine only. One point I will make is that we're working to get a better system in place to look at a catalog of all external funding across the entire system in one format, in one place, and we're working on that. But here's where you see the extramural awards of our flagship university over the past 5 years by sponsor. And this is, again, to generate the conversation about competitive funding. So the National Science Foundation is large. You see that noted there. NSF is only competitive funding. That agency doesn't tend to participate in earmarks or other kinds of congressional appropriation funding, which means that a big portion of the time spent by faculty, students, and staff here is on preparing proposals that go to NSF, Department of Defense. You see here, some of that is earmark funding, USDA, and then a number of other smaller organizations. We have a lot of room to grow. We watch our peers and we watch national statistics. We have room to grow with NIH, Department of Energy, NASA in particular, because those agencies also have competitive programs where our faculty stand a chance of doing well. So just very quickly on how do we work on this competitiveness piece, I'll say a bit about how the federal R&D enterprise works based on my own experience. We just last week had a 10th anniversary of a project that got started at NSF when I was there, which was a fundamental research program for education. And the history of that is interesting to me, but maybe not to the rest of everybody. It was basically that education at NSF wasn't doing very much fundamental research, wasn't funding very much. And so we made a shift and had a fun panel with some current and past leaders and talked about it. But the people who make these programs at the federal agencies very often are faculty from universities, which is what I was when I was there. They develop an idea. They say, gee, this would be something that really might matter for the country, for us to have more research in this area. They publish a solicitation and a call for proposals. They seek from the Congress budget dollars to be able to fund the program, and then they go ahead and have a competition. So another area where I think we as a system could do way more is to send faculty to Washington for temporary assignments. That's a normal way that these agencies work. And we have a couple of faculty from UMaine right now serving as, they call them rotators in the federal government, because they bring their ideas there and they learn a lot about how the process works. Here is a piece of how the process works. Again, more detail, but the merit review part is in part why it's so important for us to have a lot of our faculty having proposals in this part of the system, because that's where the most expert folks from around the country in every field are reading these projects, reading these proposals. And we have a number of faculty across the entire system who serve as reviewers to the federal government. So it's this big system of activity that's a little bit hidden and yet is really vital to our health as a system. So I wanted to bring up this with you all today. Two quick case studies that are about two competitive federal programs where our research and innovation offices are really trying to help now across the whole system to bring more people into these areas. The first is the NSF Career Program, which some of you saw those displays last night. Career is one of NSF's most competitive programs. It's for faculty who are early in their career, so there are certain limitations and eligibility requirements. They can submit up to 3 times, and I don't know if you've asked, but I did. I asked a couple of the presenters last night, did you get it on your first try? And they said, no, second try. So that's not unusual at all. But think about the persistence that takes, because you do everything you can possibly do to write the best proposal. You send it in, it doesn't get funded. The instinct would be to say, okay, I give up. But these are, the business is one of trying a few times, getting reviewer comments, being able to interpret those comments and write the proposal again. This is an interesting program because it requires not just the basic research or whatever the applied research might be, but the integration of that with education, which is unique to NSF actually, or to this program for sure, where those researchers, if you saw those posters last night, they all showed you their education plan as well. And normally, if you were at a research conference, you might not see the education plan. So here at UMaine, we've been working, and I would like to credit Jason Charland, who I think is here. Jason there, particularly for his good work over several years, over 10 years really, to bolster our success with the career program. These are single investigator awards. They're meant to help somebody get their career launched in a productive way, and they're very hard to get. And so here you see our submissions and then our successes, and that's actually quite good. You see the increase, very strong in 2021, 2020, down a little bit in 2022, but UMaine in general is surpassing the career success rate nationally, which is between 14 and 24% of the proposals are actually funded. And we've been at about 21 in the country. Jason has in my notes, 1% of all career awards nationwide went to UMaine in 2022. So this is a big deal. And you saw those outstanding faculty last night. Here are pictures of the last 3 cohorts. We have others on the campus who had career awards prior to this, but it's a very big deal for a university to have them. It's very competitive. And what we'd like to be doing with all campuses across the system is increasing the readiness to receive these awards. And because they're single investigator awards, there's actually a good chance that someone who might be at one of our other universities and might be the only one in that field there's still a really good chance to get a career award because they don't need to depend on a full team or a full large suite of graduate students and others. So, so this is one area where we've had such good success at UMaine that we're looking to expand what we're able to do beyond. And these folks are amazing. A second agency that I'd like to mention is HRSA, the Health Resources and Services Administration. Trustee Riley knows this organization from her past. This organization supports access to healthcare in rural areas, so it's a federal agency. It supports the training of health professionals, the distribution of providers to areas where they are needed most, and improvements in healthcare delivery. So if you have a spectrum of very basic research out to very applied translational work, HRSA's funding is much more on that translational end, but you need the whole spectrum because somebody needs to be doing the basic work that gets translated. And so what we're looking at is an entire cycle. And so here's a little bit about HRSA, and you can look at this in your notes. They typically have a short deadline between the RFP release and the submission, which means people have to be ready with these ideas and ready to go. And we've had a focus in the last few years on HRSA success, and you see it's been terrific. Where the track record of submissions and then of success has been very strong. We've had 6 submissions, 5 awards, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So folks like Jason and others in his office spend a lot of time helping to be ready for these calls for proposals and then helping faculty to find the right one and write a successful grant. And here are the HRSA grants that we've had in the last few years. And again, it's in your material if you'd like to look more carefully about a couple that I'll point out. Well Nurse, which is about wellness and nursing education, just came in 2022. In 2021, we have Promoting Diversity in Nursing Education, critical for nursing, that students are prepared for diversity as they receive their training and education, and other topics as well. So these are very practical, very relevant for the state of Maine, but require our folks to compete at the national level. So what does it take to have a good infrastructure for competitive awards? We have a very sound infrastructure for earmarks, for congressionally directed appropriations. I would thank Sam Warren, whom I saw before someplace. She was here, is here. Who has been incredible in helping us to move into that new world very, very successfully with the great support of our congressional delegation. As we think about the competitive awards, it takes a slightly different infrastructure, and you need all these pieces. You need a research administration to watch all of the postings so that we can help alert faculty to what's coming up there and what might be available. And usually every year there are new programs. So somebody has to track all of that. Research compliance, we've spoken about before. Most of these areas have quite strict federal regulation around them, which means that you have to be sure as you write the proposal that you could actually afford to do the work in compliance, that your facilities will be adequate, that your committee structures are sufficient, and so forth. Research development is what Jason and his team do. That's about essentially helping people learn to write proposals, which is not an automatically known sort of skill by PhD researchers, although graduate students learn to do it often along the way, and are incredibly helpful and important to that. So writing a good proposal is not straightforward. We get a lot of questions about, couldn't we just hire proposal writers? But in this business, because the work is very, very technical, it doesn't always work to use a proposal writer. We have some excellent people who can help, but the ideas have to come from the expert in the field, and they can sketch them, and then others can help to write the successful proposal. It's really good to get people who've been reviewers to help with research development because they know what's needed. So there's a big enterprise that's pretty fascinating and that we do very well here at UMaine. You need to have partnerships because you'll be in the middle of a proposal and it will say, we need 5 letters of support from your partners. And then you'll say, oh my gosh, forgot about having partners. Let's go find some. And you have to do that carefully. As an education professor in a past life, often a proposal writer would show up at the door like the day the proposal was due and say, I need an evaluator. Can you help me figure out how to do the evaluation in my proposal? And I know people at this university and across the system have experienced that. So you want to build a culture where that doesn't happen. That's kind of not too effective. And then you have to have the facilities and equipment to do it. And that's costly. And a lot of these programs won't fund the equipment, which means somebody else has to figure out a way to fund the equipment. So it's a big production. And on the other end of it, we have commercialization. And I wanted to point out that here at UMaine, and then for the whole system, we have the full spectrum from this very early on research development work all the way out to the Maine Innovation Research and Technology Accelerator, which we call MIRTA. That's a fantastic organization run through the University of Maine, SPIRE organization, UMaine's Foster Center for Innovation. Basically what happens is teams from across the system and across Maine really, bring their lab discoveries and ideas to the MIRTA competition and say, we think maybe this is commercializable. And then those with promise are pulled together into teams. They work for 20 hours a week for 16 weeks to do market research, IP analysis, business model development, and they get expert advice from people who are business incubation expert staff. We've had some competitive federal funding to help do this work actually. So it's the other end of the spectrum. It's been used by folks from across the whole system. It is based at UMaine, but I would report that from the 21 teams in the first 5 MIRTA cohorts, there have been 8 new startups, 7 patents, and the teams have raised more than 2.5 million in external funding and prototype sales to support the commercialization. So you want the whole system to be healthy, and it is, and what we're looking to do is grow it and make it more accessible system-wide. I would point out that UNAR Labs is a spinoff that started in the VEMI lab, which several of you visited yesterday. It's to produce technologies to support visually impaired people to use a variety of modalities in their daily lives. So we can boast at the very basic end about the great work. We can boast at the very applied end and translational and even entrepreneurship end and everything in between. And what we're trying to do to help grow this is use the examples that we have system-wide and then start to expand our services to make this whole thing even more robust. These I'll go through very quickly because I know we're a bit short on time, but we have so many great examples across the system of people who are successful in this competitive funding. And I didn't plan to call on anybody, and I don't know if I do have people who've been successful writers of outside grants, but this can take weeks, months to prepare the proposal. And so a big chunk of time that our faculty and staff spend might never, ever be recognized in any clear way, because if they don't get funded, that's kind of that, and they have to do it again. And so we want to support it, and it's thriving often in small bits, but nonetheless, here we have a project at the University of Southern Maine, a $1.8 million grant from the Department of Ed to increase the number of credentialed psychologists in Maine's rural high-need schools. This would be in the kind of translational category based in research, but also drawing heavily on context in the state and knowledge in the profession. So that's fantastic work at USM. US Department of Ed has a strengthening institutions program, and we've had success with UMPI with new degrees in computer science and health administration and a variety of opportunities here, 2.25 million. So we have people across the whole system doing this work. Farmington has a project that involves forest science, or there is a project with NASA to study drought resilience in Western forests. And so you see across these fields, sorry, I was talking about Farmington, but this is Fort Kent, where we also have faculty who are doing a fantastic job focusing on forestry business needs. The span is quite substantial, and then the Farmington project. And we are very proud that this is able to happen across the whole system, but when you see a single project or a couple projects in one place, it means that those folks are not necessarily having the full-blown research infrastructure support that they might need. And that what we're trying to do is make that more available. So here's another one, USDA project that offers experiential learning for undergraduates and fellowships through the University of Maine in partnership with knowledge keepers of the Wabanaki tribes, facilitated through the Wabanaki Center. So in going forward as the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, and now we have OVCRI, so now that we're calling it an office, but it's really our small team of myself, Jason Charlin, Sam Warren, and others who are working to be supportive. We are going to focus on helping folks find funding and step that up even more on this competitive side. Focus on collaboration as people need to find each other across the system, and then focus to some extent on policy. And by this, I do mean board policy and APLs to help make sure that our research environment here in the system is robust and rich and well supported and current. So we'll be helping to look at some of that as well. And in the board at May, if we're invited to speak, we're going to talk about specific strategies and our call for ideas update. So I wanted to just dive in, as I said, to this competitive funding topic. I noticed that our Vice President for Research and Dean of the Graduate School, Cody Vararamian, is here too, so he doesn't know it, but I would put him on the spot to help answer any questions that we might have, that you might have. And one question that I would ask is, if we have a pretty good estimate, it's hard to get, but Cody or Jason or Jake maybe, the percentage of our total federal externally sponsored funding, what percentage of that comes from competitive awards lately? And Cody, you can, no, I know, my fault. Okay, so if it's in that range, and it would vary a lot by year, by what happened in the federal earmarks, by what happened in the appropriations funding, that 50 to 60% is solid. But what I worry about is if we don't have earmarks going forward, if the congressional appropriation pieces don't necessarily go well, or if the federal budget for research begins to drop, we have to be as ready as we can be on that competitive award side. And so that's the reason for the focus and the emphasis on it right now. Other questions?
Great. Trustee Martin?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. Am I on? There we go.
Yeah.
President Freeney Monday, thank you very much for that presentation. This is really exciting stuff. I had the opportunity at graduation last year to sit next to a young man who took advantage of some of this opportunity and with some funding here was able to start an oyster farm. I think we know he was also the class salutatorian and I believe an engineering major. Incredible young man. I've heard from several students at this meeting about there are a lot of opportunities here and it's just to find out about them.
Yeah.
Great things in the commercialization. I saw something the other day on the University of Maine Facebook page about some students that went commercialized some cream. I believe it was called Marin from lobster shells
Yes,
or
yeah.
whatnot. It was being marketed through LL Bean. Amazing stuff. How do we share this excitement and the opportunities early on and use it as a recruiting tool? Because we seem to be struggling with recruitment, but this to me, I mean, it almost makes me want to go back to school. It's very,
Well,
very exciting.
We have openings. You're welcome. But thank you for that. I think there are lots of things we need to be doing and we need to do better. One vehicle that we have for publicizing this would be the UMS Transforms Alfond Foundation funded research learning experiences. That's a piece of the theory kind of behind that whole chunk of the work, because the notion is that if we can get our faculty, and we are getting them system-wide, we're getting them to say, okay, I'm ready to try to engage first-year students with my research or my scholarly work, because we want a broad definition of research. I'm ready to engage first-year students. That is not straightforward for everybody, right? The work is quite technical, doesn't always match with where a student might be when they come in, but we are breaking new ground as a system by having faculty across the whole place putting together experiential learning opportunities for first-year students to introduce them to the work of research. Now we're just in our second year of that, right? So we're learning about it and we're fine-tuning, but I think we need to advertise that system-wide as a very big deal. And beyond that, finding good systems for knowing what everybody's doing and when they have position openings and how they're finding students would be fantastic. I hear a lot from faculty about finding students who are in their classes. So they see a promising student in an undergraduate course and they say, gee, I think that person could help. We need to help more people make that more available for more students. Don't have a good solution.
I think I had Professor Scott next and then Trustee McMahon. Mike? No? Okay, it must have been Trustee McMahon, sorry.
Can you quantify the success of commercialization in terms of jobs created or state income tax paid or some quantifiable measure? Do we have that? So when we go and ask for more money from the legislature, for example, we can say, this is what we've achieved.
We don't have that in that precise format, Trustee, and I think we can do that now. We've had enough of a track record with MRTA to be able to speak to that. So we'll go back and see if we're able to put those kinds of numbers together clearly. We are able to talk about the return on the MEIF investment, but that's a more general number. It doesn't break it out. And we've been being asked for years about jobs created. So it is time for us to take that seriously now. And I mean, we take it seriously, but we're at a critical juncture where I think we have enough to report that we will work on that. Thank you. The other thing I would point out about this research relative to jobs created is it does create jobs on the campus when these grants come in from the federal government for staff, for faculty, for students, as those are implemented.
Trustee Kane.
Comments reminded me of one of the best convocation speeches I ever heard here at the university, but 20 years ago, maybe it was 21 years ago. I think it was fall of 2002. Stephen King spoke to the incoming class here, and he gave this incredible speech. And he said, the University of Maine is like the greatest buffet you've ever been to in your entire life. And he said, but if you don't get up and go get what you need and try things, nobody's going to bring it to you. And what Trustee Martin just said, it reminded me of that. I haven't thought about that speech in a while, but I stuck with me because that was my experience, right? It was the people who sort of pointed out what was on the buffet that I could go get and be a part of and try and experiment with and, you know, think about what you want to do with your life and have leadership opportunities or research opportunities in this sense. But it is about making sure people know what's on that buffet so they can go be a part of it and try things, right? Sort of that idea of trying things to figure out what you want to do, what you want to be, and things you never even imagined that were there. I still believe that's true about the University of Maine and the system today, for what it's worth.
Trustee Alexander.
I want to follow up on Trustee Martin's comment, because she was talking not just about alerting folks who attend our universities of this incredible set of opportunities, but marketing the fact that we have these opportunities as a recruitment tool. I landed at the Portland Jetport Saturday morning, and as we all do, trundled on down to baggage claim, where, as you know, for each of the baggage claim sections, there is a huge screen that you are forced to watch in repetitive mode of advertising. And on this screen, as I'm waiting for my bag, was students promoting what was happening at the Rue Institute, the University of New England, and Thomas College, and nothing from the University of Maine. That is the kind of public awareness and presentation of what's happening here that we need to do more of. Thank you.
I can attest as a longtime traveler, there have been University of Maine.
Well,
But
Thank you for that. Absolutely agree. And we continue to work on that.
this is very exciting stuff, and thank you for stretching our minds with the poster sessions. I'm still trying to grapple with 2D. It was amazing. Me in basic science, but it was terrific. It was terrific. But I thought one of the tidbits in your comments was more of our faculty are participating as reviewers. That's really important. That's
yes.
terrific.
Yes, I mean, our faculty, this is across the system. They come from first-rate institutions. Their advanced degrees are coming from major places. And so they've been a part of that world to learn how to be a member of the professional field in the research side. And they review, Trustee Cates was here for a visit recently, and we wandered into actually through a very depressing and scary basement of one of our buildings with all kinds of things falling apart into this spectacular microscopy lab that was at the end of the corridor. And he'll remember that he chatted with the person sitting there and said, "What are you up to?" And she said, "Oh, I'm reviewing a paper." I think it is routine part of the work, but it's, we're going to speak about tenure later. We don't really ask people, how many papers did you review? How many proposal review sessions did you attend? It's a part of what's expected as a professional, and our faculty do it widely. And you're right, it's very important because it gets them out there as leaders and as known experts.
It's terrific. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
We'll turn to Vice Chancellor Dorsey and then have a quick break to try to get us back on time.
Well, you know that it is always my goal to get us back on time. So I will make sure that we're ahead of schedule by the time I'm done. How's that? I just have 2 quick updates today. The first I wanted to mention is about work in human resources. So at the July board meeting, as a reminder, we had been asked to review the hiring practices across the system. We've been working on that report, and we offered a preliminary report to the HRLR committee last month, I believe. We received quite a bit of feedback, some really great discussions about steps in moving it forward, other areas to dig into. So the team that consists of various HR leaders from across the system and Kayla Flewelling from the Strategic Initiatives Office, we've been working on that report, digging into the areas that were brought up again at HRLR, and we will offer a more formal report at our next meeting. So just a note that the work is continuing and moving forward. Some really good information coming out. I did not have this as part of my planned comments, but I did want to just mention quickly that Vice Chancellor Lowe and I connected during and after the public presentation portion of this morning's meeting. I've already worked with HR and started to talk about the issues that were raised both by the graduate student workers and also by the retirees. And both of those initiatives we're meeting on later today. So we will have some information for you moving forward. And we'll also get in touch with the folks who spoke this morning. So moving quickly on their concerns. So the second piece of my report today is on the strategic plan. As you know, we're moving well into the completion of our plan. We're through the first round of feedback, working on the second round of drafting. And what I'd like to talk about just quickly is the budget and the timeline, and then I'm going to turn it over to some other folks to join me with some additional comments. We are currently at about 83% of the budget. I don't see that we will move much beyond that. We have just a little bit of expense that we may incur between now and the end of this project. So I can't imagine that we would go much beyond, 85% of the budget, but hopefully successfully keeping it well under budget. And also originally the timeframe listed for completion would have been for spring, summer, or even potentially fall. But we have been able to move that into the spring area, and I will let Vice Chancellor St. John get into the details of the timeline. But we plan to have something to you again at the May meeting. Yep, come on up, Jeff. So we're working, having lots of great feedback loops, getting incredibly good information from the different groups that have been reading and reviewing the plan. I'll ask Vice Chancellor St. John to talk about the feedback, the draft process. And then when he's done, I would like Trustee Kane, who, as you know, is the chair of the BOT Strategic Planning Committee, to give a quick update from the committee's perspective.
Thanks, Carolyn, and I'll be quick as well. As the trustees know, we formed a 15-member writing team just before Christmas. There are 4 faculty on that group, 3 system staff, 3 university administrators, 3 trustees, Trustees Kane, Alexander, and Martin, a student representative, Lisa Prozienski, who's one of our board reps, and 1 president, President Rice. President Rice is also on the board's strategic planning committee, which means every time I send an email to the writing team, the president, or the committee, he gets the same email 3 times. Apologies to President Rice. We shared the first draft with the UMS community on February 27. And since that point, just about a month, we've had 1,700 people go into the email that we sent from the Chancellor and go in and review the draft. And of those, over 115 people have now submitted comments through an anonymous feedback mechanism. In addition to their comments, the writing team has generated their own feedback at its comments, as has the board's strategic planning committee, as have the presidents and the Chancellor. The writing team meets every other week. The presidents and the Chancellor are meeting weekly. As you all know, the board's committee meets monthly. And so there's a continuous communication, continuous sharing of input and updating. We will share the second draft of the strategic plan next Tuesday, April 4. In this case, both with all employees and in a separate note, but with the same basic content and same draft, of course, to all students. The board felt strongly, and we agree with them, that students should be commenting on the draft as well, so that they'll be receiving it. I just had a chance to share that update with the board student representatives this morning. One other piece of information we want to share is that we know that there's a desire, of course, for transparency in all facets of this work. So with the second draft, just as we did in the NECHI process with self-study drafts last year, we will post on our strategic planning website a link to the public comments that have come in so far. So again, they're anonymous, but any faculty member, any administrator, any staff member, any student can see all the comments that have been generated by the UMS community, just as those comments have been shared through regular updates, in regular batches with the writing team and also with the presidents. And with help from Trustee Kane, we also put out a couple of reminders that have been very useful for us in generating additional comments. We'll do the same thing with the second draft of the plan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The only thing, a couple things that I would add, thank you to both of you. And Jeff went from NECHI to strategic planning writing. So who knows what will be next for you, Jeff? We have to finish this one. But what I wanted to stress today, and I'm sure to our large viewing audience online, anyone who might be listening, and particularly to our student reps who are here, who will be getting the next draft, is that we really do want your feedback. All of us on the writing committee have reviewed all of it. Doesn't go on a shelf. It doesn't go in a folder. It comes before us. We look at it. We consider it. It gets incorporated, and we take it very seriously. The feedback has been outstanding. It ranges from big ideas to technical fixes in grammar, because everyone's human when they're writing big documents. But it's so meaningful, and we really want this to be a document that everyone can see their fingerprints on. Right. So my ask is, when the next round comes out next week on the 4th, that the student reps, you hopefully can take it back and deliberately and actively, the faculty reps deliberately and actively seek the feedback and ask people to read it. It's not that long and we're trying to make it shorter. But thanks to Jason Charland and his advocacy for a 15-page report, which we're going to try to do something close to that. But we really need those comments. And I know this is kind of a long-winded plea, but I just want to make sure it really sinks in that it's worth taking, an hour or so to read it. Send us a quick note through the anonymous portal or send it directly to Jeff. We need your feedback. The next strategic planning meeting is May 11th, where we'll be able to take a look at that feedback that will come in through the month of April. And then the plan is to have a final draft for the board to review and hopefully earn approval for at the May 22nd meeting. Thank you.
I'm happy to answer any questions about either one of the topics, but also wanted to mention just quickly in relation to some of the questions in the last presentation with President Freeney-Mundy and the trustees about really marketing the initiatives that she was talking about. The Chancellor right now has an initiative that he's talking with leadership and presidents about that relates to system-wide marketing. And the focus of that marketing, we've talked about it sort of having a couple of different areas. One is the value of higher education in general, just trying to remind people of education and the benefits of that. But the second is to try and engage them in what's happening across the system, just to get them excited about looking into any one of the universities. And that's where I see this. This could be a really great way to talk about that research, get people excited and looking into what we're doing, and then at one of the campuses that may be of interest to them.
If I
Certainly.
just might respond to that, I would explain that historically, the system was not the marketer and did not play a role. Last year, we put money aside for marketing assistance. And I think that was spent well in some cases, and we're learning in others about what carries the message. But I would like to assure the board that in the system budget, we are setting aside additional dollars to enlarge our marketing, the system's marketing footprint, as opposed to leaving it up to the universities. Yeah, and by the way, I'm not being critical of the universities. They concentrate on what they think are going to generate students for their universities. But there is this bigger issue that has to be contested in Maine about the value of degrees and the work. And as we are also point out that if you graduate from one of our institutions, you're amongst a class of people who earn twice the average earnings of other Mainers. So we do have stories to tell. But this is a market change begun last year. And now with a much broader charge and personnel to work on that charge, I think we can address some of the issues that have been raised.
And I would add to that, that the funds that we're talking about are also have been sent from the state appropriation from our money, but it has been designated for marketing efforts and things like that. So we aren't taking it from other areas, which we know are under-resourced at the moment.
Trustee Singham?
Thank you. I think students are also interested, so I'm hoping you can speak to this now or at some other point, in how student input is being taken into account in marketing. I guess a few months ago, I was watching a YouTube video and one of the ads was for UMass. And I didn't realize that for months I was watching UMass ads until recently I got a UMaine ad. And I thought, it's about time that I get this ad. I live in Maine. I should be seeing this more often. And also just talking with students about how Insta Reels, TikTok, there are just so many avenues that students in high school and middle school are looking at now that we should be, I think, marketing in ways that resonate with students in terms of academics, also social life, just all the aspects of what UMS has to offer. So if you could speak to that, that would be helpful.
Certainly. And I really think that student involvement is probably going to take place more at the campus level, at the university level. But certainly we can engage them in what we do at the system. The system level is to sort of talk about and begin to expose people to the system as a whole. But certainly we can add students to those conversations. But I would, again, maybe we could have the president speak at a future meeting about how they engage students in their marketing of their university and specific programs. That would be excellent. Any other questions? So I added 2 topics and ended 10 minutes early for the
Show
record.
off.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? Can we do it? 5-minute break and be back and begin with the budget. Watch this. It's not, you can stand, it's 15. So- You know, I have to say that I look at those ads too. Yes, they are. This, come on. Here we go, here we go, here we go. That was the longest 5 minutes ever known to man. Thank you all for reconvening. I did such a good job reconvening. There he is. Okay. Let's now turn to Vice Chancellor for Finance, Ryan Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 3 items that I'll be covering this morning. Talk a little bit about investment returns. Going to cover the FY23 budget forecast, and then want to provide a brief update on where we are with the UMS budget and the most recent FFT committee meeting. So let me start with investment results. Investment results, as always, are included in your board materials. I'm going to provide you an update through January. We have supplemented this with some additional information that we have from February, and then March results through the 17th. So that should give you a pretty decent shot of where picture of where we're trending. The managed investment pool with a January market value of 356 million saw a gain of 4.9% for that month, followed by a loss of 1.8% for February, bringing the fiscal year to date gain to a positive 4.8%. Our preliminary March results show a decline of 1.3%. The pension plan with a market value of nearly 20 million saw a gain of 3.6% for the month, followed by a loss of 1.7% for February, bringing the fiscal year to date gain to 2.2%. A preliminary results for the pension fund in March are flat. The operating fund with a market value of 351 million and a more conservative asset allocation saw a gain of 1.7% for the month of January, with a loss of 0.6% for February, bringing the fiscal year to date return to 2%, with a March preliminary gain of 0.4%. The fiscal year to date net investment income through the 17th is 5.5 million or 2.9 million above the annual budget. Shifting next to the E&G and auxiliary FY23 February forecast. We'll display that if we could, Heather. Yes. Yep. I think you have this in your materials, but just for the folks in the audience and the thousands and thousands listening at home. In front of you, in really small print up there is the FY23 February budget forecast. As a reminder, we do these budget to actual forecasts at least 3 times a year is what our plan is. This is actually the first one of this fiscal year because typically we would do the first one of these in October, but October was the time when we also came forward with budget revisions. So we changed all of the budgets at that point in time. So this is actually your first forecast of fiscal year 23, although we've obviously been tracking this on a pretty regular basis. Before I get into the numbers, I also want to note that everything that you see on this sheet, none of it impacts the FY24 budget presentations that you had on Wednesday. So even though there are a couple of campuses that have seen their budgets for FY23, their budget gap kind of grow, and we'll need to address that. We knew all of these when we did those budget presentations. So nothing in here will at least negatively impact the FY24 budget presentations as we presented them to you a few days ago. So I always like to kind of read down through these, make sure everyone understands. And so I'll start right at the top with UMaine and UMaine Machias. Right on budget with no change. So originally forecasted a budget deficit of about 17.7 million. The forecast is still in line with that. You can see that budget gap as you accepted back in January is closed with a $17.7 million transfer from reserves. At UMA, the picture has gotten a little bit better, originally forecasting a budget deficit of about $1 million. That's down to about 411,000. That is generally a combination of higher attrition savings, which is a trend we've been experiencing system-wide. We talked some about that on Wednesday, as well as some operational savings. So their projected gap now is 411,000. That's an improvement of 665,000. That's 655,000 that doesn't need to come out of their reserves. At UMF, the picture has gotten a little bit worse there. Spring enrollment was down by about 20 students from what they might have typically picked up at that time of year. It translates into about a $300,000 impact. There are other operational increases there. And we have been working actively with the campus to close that gap. We will provide an additional update on that progress in April. And to the extent that we're not able to close that gap through a number of initiatives that freezing spending, a number of initiatives that the campus has put in place. To the extent we can't solve that full gap, we will bring a solution to you at the May meeting that would close that gap. At Fort Kent, the gap was originally projected at just below $1 million. It is now forecasted at about $127,000. So some great work there. That results in a positive variance of $810,000. Both the Fort Kent budget situation as well as Presque Isle are both entirely consistent with everything that you heard on Wednesday as part of those budget presentations. Both campuses would use some of that number that you see in the variance column, some unspent budget stabilization funds, and roll those forward to help solve the 2024 budgets. Again, I mentioned the Presque Isle number, an improvement of about $220,000 from the original budget. At USM, the gap there in relation to budget has grown considerably from a little less than $1 million to about 5.4 million. This is not a surprise. We've been working with the president and that campus since November and December on those actions. The campus has instituted a number of spending restrictions. It is primarily driven at USM by enrollment. There are some operational increases, some scholarship dollars that exceeded budget, but generally that number is driven by enrollment. At Maine Law, they are right on budget. We had forecasted a gap of 1.2. We're still looking at that same $1.2 million deficit, which would be closed from a budget stabilization transfer this board approved last May. And then looking at governance, university services, the employee benefit pool, which are the other three kind of areas that we forecast. Governance and the benefit pool are online. University services, we are expecting a surplus there of approximately 500,000. Again, that is largely attributed to attrition savings. Those are dollars that will either roll into the camp, either be refunded back to the campuses, or will use to reduce rates in the next year if we realize that by fiscal year end. The final line that you see there is unrestricted investment income. When we produced this document and sent it out, we didn't have the market returns for March, so those numbers have changed for the better. Again, we had originally budgeted the 2.6. I just updated you on that middle number in the forecast. We're forecasting that at 5.5, which gives a positive variance there of 2.9 million to budget. The next, I think there's one more page in this update, and there it is right there. So again, just a reminder, 2-3 times a year I do this. Public Law 2011, Chapter 616. Which dealt with a number of issues in state government, primarily at the Maine Turnpike Authority, and made a number of recommendations. One of those was that we report regularly to the board on travel expenditures, meals, memberships, gifts, donations. And so we do that at least 3 times a year. We do that at the initial budget submission. We'll do it today. You'll see this same numbers updated when we present what hopefully will be a final budget to you on May the 22nd. Actuals well below budget in E&G and auxiliary. That's what we want to see. Same in memberships, gifts, donations, and sponsorships. And we are over budget budget, as you'll see there in restricted. No concern about that. That is just an estimate that we do at the beginning of the year. Nobody is traveling on restricted dollars that aren't paid for. It's probably a good thing. It means that we're probably bringing in more resources there, more travel, more things along there. So no concerns there. But again, you will see that at my May presentation as well. And then finally, I just want to wrap up my my comments by just providing a brief update on the FFT meeting last Wednesday. So we started our budget work, as everyone knows, in the fall at all the campuses in the system. That rolled into the campus budget development phase in October, proceeded in a number of campus forums, and ultimately we finalized the initial budget drafts in late February. I had a full day of budget presentations last Wednesday. I looked at the YouTube video. It's 7 hours and 50 minutes of nonstop excitement in there. Happy to report that 168 people took the time to watch at least a portion of that video. For those of you that were not able to be at the FFT meeting, whether that's trustees or faculty or staff or anyone, strongly encourage you to take a look at those presentations. They were great. You can fast forward to your campus if you want. You can go right by my my long comments. But really, really good information in there, and would encourage you to take advantage of that. As we proceed with the schedule, and I'll talk about what's coming up, that will actually be the only time the campuses do a full-blown presentation. So if you really want to understand those budgets, I definitely would encourage you to take advantage of that before the April and May votes. The next kind of formal action that we have for the budget will be an FFT meeting on April 12th. This is the equivalent of the committee's work session. So we had a number of requests for information from that meeting last Wednesday. We're compiling that information. We'll get it out to the committee well before that meeting. We'll do a comprehensive review of the shared service and governance budget on the 12th. We'll talk a little bit about the allocation model, where we are in the evolution of that. I would expect that we would do an update on enrollment. Heard lots of concerns about enrollment, questions about those. So we'll come back and we'll not only give you an update on the campus enrollments, but then we'll talk about how they're tracking at that particular point in time. On April the 26th, the FFT meeting, the committee will meet again. That would typically be the meeting where the FFT committee would vote on the budget, assuming that that goes well, and that's an affirmative vote. Then it would come to the full board on May the 22nd. So that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions on any of those topics.
Thank you, Ryan. Trustee Alexander.
I have a question and to ask you for many of us, and I'll include myself, sadly, in this question, to explain the difference in the funding columns between what a reserve is and what a stabilization funding source is. Thank you.
Yeah, so reserve funds for purposes of this sheet reflect reserve dollars that are held at the individual campuses. So in this case, the 17.7 million that you see there are University of Maine reserves. 411,000 would be UMA reserves. As part of the budget presentation that we did last Wednesday, you'll see a slide in there from each of the individual campuses on what their reserve amounts are. We also had a request for a follow-up at the April 12th meeting that we take all of those individual slides and essentially put them on a one-pager so that you can see what the reserve levels for each of the campuses are. So we will do that. The stabilization represents the system budget stabilization funds. Again, there's a really helpful slide with some historical information in my Wednesday budget presentation. But those are dollars that come into the system through temporary investment income. So when I mentioned just a few minutes ago that we're running about $2.5 million ahead year to date, if that's where we were to end the year, then those funds would flow into the system budget stabilization fund. They are primarily used to support campuses when we run into budget challenges. Again, the only source of funds for that is temporary investment income. So we do well 2 years ago, we do well when the market does well. Last year, we really struggled, lost about 13.5 million over the course of the year. That significantly impacted the balance in the budget stabilization fund. Great question. Thank you.
Sure.
So the COVID relief funding is completely allocated and spent. Is that correct?
I don't know that it is all spent. I still think
Well-
some of it is still out there on some of the campuses, but it's generally been allocated for specific purposes, and we'll certainly get an update for that, and we'll add it to our conversation on the 12th.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions for Vice Chancellor Lowe? We obviously have experienced the extraordinary work of each of the universities to balance budgets, but we are not out of the woods, so our work remains. Anybody else? Great.
Thank you.
Ray. Thank you. And I'd like to take a minute. We have a mystery guest. I think we were very pleased to see Senator Tipping join us for this meeting. Are you still here, Senator? Stand and say hello. Senator Tipping is a great advocate for the University of Maine system, and we're very pleased to have you here. Let me turn us now to the action agenda and take just a minute. I don't want to preempt our vote here, but I want to take a minute because the first vote is about tenure. And we always, as a committee, all of our work comes through committees, and it's been deliberated, and all of it takes lots of time before it gets here. And so our votes tend to be very quick. But none is more deliberative than the tenure process. And I think it behooves us to spend a minute to just congratulate these faculty, the work that goes into just being here before us for tenure review is extraordinary. So it's their entire careers, the kinds of research that we saw in the reviews, the kinds of teaching excellence identified by student reviews, the community engagement, the engagement within the university system. It is truly remarkable. And we've had the opportunity in the ASA committee under Chairman McMahon's leadership to take a real hard look at all of these folks. And Emily's point about buffet and the conversation last night about opportunity. You read these tenure reviews, and this is the opportunity of the University of Maine. There are phenomenal people here. We recognize, even though we will take a quick vote, the work that went into this. We know that tenure is much maligned in the public, but it represents a badge of quality and excellence in our university, and we commend all of those who are before us for this review. So with that, let me read the resolution that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee to accept the recommendations for tenure submitted by the universities of the University of Maine system. Approvals will take effect September 1st, 2023 for faculty with academic year appointments, and on July 1, 2023 for faculty with fiscal year appointments. Can I have a motion? Trustee Kane, seconded by Trustee Michaud. Any comments?
As a member of the committee, I can say to echo Chair Riley's comments. It is a very talented group of individuals that we heard in detail about each of them in our committee meeting. Thank you.
And anyone in the process itself that goes through a gazillion committees and deans, it's just too confusing to know. So I can't imagine what it feels like to be on the other end of tenure. So with that, may I have a vote? All those in favor of the tenure recommendation? All those opposed? All those abstaining? Congratulations to our faculty. Oh, sorry. Oh, Donna, I'm sorry. Donna, I'm terrible. Donna gave the hand. Donna gave the hand.
We have to hear from her.
We have to hear you say it, Donna. You're on mute.
Yes.
Is that
it?
Yes. Now it's unanimous. Thank you all very much and congratulations. It's quite an achievement. Let's move on to tenure time of hire, Professor of the Department of History, President Farini Mundy.
Thank you, and I'll sneak in my own congratulations to everyone who is just tenured professionals. We have two proposals to the Board of Trustees for granting of tenure and rank higher. One is for Dr. Gabriel Paquette, who is currently the University of Maine Associate Provost for Academic Affairs and Faculty Development. And we are proposing that he be granted tenure as a professor in the Department of History of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, effective February 3, 2023. Gabe has an extraordinary record of scholarship and publication, and has received the support of the department and the college and the provost. So we propose his tenure.
Great. And the resolution is that the board, it doesn't name him, it's interesting, that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendations of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves tenure at time of hire professor in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at the University of Maine, tenure to be effective February 1st, 2023. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by trustee Alexander, seconded by trustee Martin. All those in, any comment? All those in favor? All those opposed? I got it. Trustee Loring.
Yes.
Great. The motion passes.
We have a second proposal for granting of tenure and rank for Dr. Scott Marzulli to be granted tenure as a professor in the School of Kinesiology, Physical Education and Athletic Training, the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Maine, also effective February 1st, 2023. He has been appointed as Associate Provost for Student Success and Innovation at the university. Another extraordinary record of accomplishment as a scholar and as an administrator in higher education. We propose this to you with great support from the department, the college, and the university.
Great, thank you. And the resolution is that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves tenure at time of hire professor in the School of Education and Human Development at the University of Maine with tenure to be effective February 1, 2023. Can I have a motion? Moved by trustee Kane, seconded by trustee Misha. All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Thank you. Great. All right. The tenure is complete. Let's move on. We didn't have much of a winter, but when we had it, we really had it. And it was heavy, wet snow, and we have a dome replacement to talk about.
Thank you, trustee, and I have Ryan Ward here to speak. So in summary, as trustee Riley notes, the University of Maine's Mahine Dome did collapse for the last time this year in the winter storms, and so we are requesting that the board provide us authorization to expend up to $3 million for the replacement of the dome with the same size future within the facility, and to construct a connector from the east of the kitchen to Memorial's gym. And Ryan is here to give a little bit of
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. As you know, the dome collapsed from heavy snow that was very wet. The tear to the dome was unrepairable and was deemed a total loss. What we're trying to do is get a replacement in its place, not increasing the square footage at all. That will be in place before snow flies this fall. So that way we can get our teams back into the dome and back under some safer conditions than instead of playing outside in the snow they are. There is some square foot addition with a connector that we're proposing, which would be separate from the actual replacement. That will allow students to actually walk between the dome, where the dome is, and to the field house. So that way they don't have to traverse through the outside, track through more snow and so forth.
Sorry, trustee Cates.
Thank you. I understand that that's a fair amount of money, but that's the bad news. But the good news is I think there's some insurance.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry. Thank you. Part of the dome will be paid for with the insurance claim. That has not yet been completely finalized, but we are working on that. The remaining balance will be paid for through the Harold Alphon Foundation grant.
Thank you. It's helpful. Other comments or questions? Okay, with that, good news about the insurance. We've heard a lot about insurance at this meeting. Let me read the resolution. That the Board of Trustees approves, that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities and Technology Committee and authorizes the University of Maine system acting through the University of Maine to expend up to $3 million to replace the Mahane Dome with the same structure, new turf within the facility, and to construct a connector from a new structure to the Memorial Gym. Do I have a motion? Moved by trustee Kane, seconded by trustee Dobson. All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Onward to the dome. Let's turn to the long discussed new developments in the Maine College of Engineering and Computing. And I would say President Edmondson is at home dealing with a family health issue. We send her our very best, and I turn to President Prini Mundy. Yep.
First, I'd like to read a brief comment from President Edmondson in advance of this. She said, "Dear colleagues, this is a proud moment for all of us as the Maine College of Engineering and Computing MOU moves in front of the full board. It reflects the excellent work and consideration of so many people at the University of Southern Maine and the University of Maine, and it marks the beginning of innovative and important work for the University of Maine system that will benefit our students and faculty and the greater good of our state and region." And she regrets not being able to join us today. We'll be following the board meeting by live stream as much as possible, and her thoughts are with us. So thank you, President Edmondson. Maine College of Engineering and Computing, formerly called MESIS, is before you today for your consideration, and I'll just do a bit of a brief update. This, of course, is a part of our University of Maine System Transforms activity, about which we've been hearing here in this board for years now, and it's a very important activity for the state of Maine and beyond because of the needs statewide for thousands of new engineering, computing, and information science graduates. And what we have proposed before you is a new statewide college that will build on all of the outstanding work being done here at the University of Maine, at the University of Southern Maine, and across the system to simply expand the opportunities for students to collaborate and be parts of programs across the University of Maine system. Very high priority in this work is empowering and educating Maine's future workforce. So we look to double the numbers of graduates in engineering and computing. We look to double the number of faculty and research funding over time, upgrades of facilities, classrooms, and meeting spaces, increased diversity, and perhaps most exciting on top of all those very exciting things, I believe, is the opportunity for new programming, shared programs, interdisciplinary structures, and partnerships that anticipate the future needs of our state and the region and beyond in engineering and computing, which, as you may know, are among the most rapidly changing areas in terms of the kinds of preparation we need and the sorts of programs we need. We have lots of activity happening in this domain, and I'll summarize a bit of it. An initial and very robust and extensive committee structure was designed to ensure system-wide engagement of faculty and staff, to encourage statewide involvement of leaders. There were about 130 folks involved over the last couple of years in those planning groups, and many are in the room, and I would particularly single out President Joe Zakis, who was an important part of those discussions going forward. The new dean of the University of Maine College of Engineering joined us in January of 2023, Giovanna Guidoboni. Many of you have been able to meet Dr. Guidoboni thus far, bringing wonderful ideas and an extraordinarily strong sense of what it means to have collaboration and interdisciplinarity as we move ahead in computing and engineering. A number of meetings and conversations among many folks, including deans, department leaders, faculty, the provost. I have been involved in meetings with faculties across both the University of Maine and the University of Southern Maine to discuss the potential and excitement for this new college, as well as to hear the concerns and considerations that we need to have in mind as we continue with implementation. 2 new degree programs that I would highlight: a new Bachelor of Science is online now in industrial engineering at the University of Southern Maine. That was approved by this board in November. And then in the January meeting, this board approved a new degree at the University of Maine, a bachelor's degree in human-centered technology that will be based in UMaine's School of Computing and Information Science. A little bit of a highlight on facilities. You've heard about the Factory of the Future, the Green Engineering and Materials Lab, which would be a place not only for frontier research and development, but for student access and opportunities, the kinds of things we've been talking about, a setting in which University of Maine and UMaine system students can have the chance to be at the very frontier of new work in 3D printing, in the AI technologies that go with it, and in all of the kinds of applications and technological development that would occur in this new setting. That's a part of what we talk about here. And we're taking a system-wide, statewide approach. So you see here a few of the areas that we look to expand: undergraduate engineering and computing, both at UMaine and USM, programs in graduate education in engineering that can be based in Portland, where the center of much of the industry in the state of Maine is based. A stronger emphasis on the pathways from UMaine and University of Southern Maine into the rest of the system, as well as partnership with community colleges, K-12. It's a really exciting moment right now. The next two slides are just quick summaries of what's in place currently at the University of Maine in its College of Engineering, and you can read through those details, but you get the sense of the span here. We include bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and PhDs here at the University of Maine, with great job placement. Close to 60% getting their first job in the state of Maine, and you see some numbers about faculty and degrees. So we have a robust College of Engineering here at the University of Maine. Similarly, at the University of Southern Maine, a Department of Engineering that offers 3 undergraduate degrees, including the new one now. And you see some enrollments and some faculty numbers. These two programs together will be the base and the foundation for the engineering components of the Maine College of Engineering and Computing. We have been working on an MOU now for over a year with the University of Maine and the University of Southern Maine, focused on the engineering components of MCEC. We want to be very clear, there will be more to come concerning the computing and computer science and information science components of MCEC. But for this, this purpose today, it's focused on the engineering. You see some summary based on what was in original versions of this MOU and what has been achieved through conversation with new leadership and with new attention to this MOU. So what's perhaps most significant here is that the notion is here for the University of Southern Maine, Department of Engineering, and the University of Maine, or the University of Maine's engineering will work together as, let me get the language correct. I'll be careful here. USM was called in the original MOU a division of engineering. Now the University of Southern Maine's Department of Engineering will be a cooperating department within MCEC. So this is a very big step forward, and we're very excited about reaching agreement that this is the way in which these two entities will be able to collaborate. So today before you, following discussion, very robust and careful discussion at ASA, is the resolution to approve the renaming of the University of Maine's College of Engineering to be now the Maine College of Engineering and Computing, and to approve under Board Policy 309, which is about organization and establishment of major units, the conceptual framework for collaboration and participation by USM engineering programs as a cooperating department with MCEC, as described in the most recent version of the MOU. And then finally, to be clear and affirm that we are all about encouraging and confirming the faculty's shared governance responsibility for curriculum and academic policy development, all of which is to come. And we're very excited to be getting close to a stage where we can dive in on incredibly interesting curricular programmatic collaborations across the entire system. So thank you for your consideration.
Great, thank you. Any questions? We've certainly been talking about this for it's almost as long as tenure. Any questions? Yep, sorry. Vice Chair Eames.
President Farini Mundy, I'd really like to applaud you and President Edmondson and all those involved in this. This has been on the agenda for a very long time. You've worked very hard. This is going to benefit so many different students, the state of Maine, and I just want to applaud you and also recognize it's consistent with unified accreditation and all that we've asked of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Eames. And indeed, I would like to thank my colleague, President Edmondson particularly, but it's really important to talk about the collaboration that the faculty have engaged in to get us to this point. We know there is more interesting and challenging work to do as we move into programmatic work and as we expand into computing, but I do appreciate the thank you, and President Edmondson deserves important recognition right here. She's been terrific in this process.
Great day. All right, let me read the resolution. that the Board of Trustees approves the renaming of the University of Maine College of Engineering to be the Maine College of Engineering and Computing to be effective April 1st, 2023. Approves under Board Policy 309, organization and establishment of major units, the conceptual framework for collaboration and participation by USM engineering programs as a cooperating department with MCEC, as described in the February 2023 MCEC MOU, and encourages and confirms the faculty's shared governance responsibility for curriculum and academic policy development, program and university collaboration, and a focus and strong emphasis on DEI within MCEC and UMS transforms, and the reference is made to the March 2007 document attached to Board Policy 205, faculty and student representatives to the Board of Trustees in defining shared governance. Could I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Martin, seconded by Trustee Alexander. Any comments?
How do you say it? Mekek?
It's better than I love me Mises. MCEC, okay. Any comments? All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Congratulations. It's a new day for engineering. Let me move on to the proposed new Board of Trustees policy on policy. Ellen.
Thank you, Chair Riley. What's before you is a proposed new policy 216, policy on University of Maine system policies. It's to provide a manual or framework for development of board policies for anyone at the system or the campuses that are developing board policies. It will give them the outline, the criteria, the steps. This has been presented to the board as an information item at our last meeting, and it's presented today as an action item to move forward. There has been no additional comments submitted since the January meeting.
Thank you. And this is really key. It relates to our work on bylaws, especially in an era of unified accreditation with the speed of change that we're seeing. It's important that we have a system to look at our policies to make sure they're up to date, which I think some of them may not be. So thus the point. Any comments, questions?
Could I
Yep,
just say,
please.
you used the word speed, which I'm very proud of.
I've learned a new definition of speed, academic speed. No, it's been great. No, it's been great. Let me then read the proposed resolution that the Board of Trustees approves the proposed new Board of Trustees policy 216, University of Maine system policy on policies as presented. Could I have a motion? Trustee Kane, seconded by Trustee Michaud. All those in favor of a policy on policies? All those opposed? Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Great, motion passes. Thank you very much. Let's move to President McDonald and the approval of an off-cycle honorary degree nomination for 2023.
Thank you. The nominee that we had approved for 24, we would now like to accelerate into 23 because we thought that was more relevant right now. And we have a new nominee for 2024.
Why don't we take both the resolutions together? And again, for the public, these are, we know in executive session, the names of these honorees, but we keep them obviously confidential until that individual can be identified. So let me take the first resolution that the Board of Trustees approves the off-cycle 2023 nomination for honorary degrees for UMF as presented. It's a motion.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Kane, seconded by Trustee Eames. All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Great. We'll move on to the 2024. That the Board of Trustees approves the off-cycle 2024 nomination for honorary degree for UMF as presented. Can I have a motion? Trustee Martin, Trustee Alexander, all those in favor, all those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, now we move on to another issue that's been before us for quite a while, and we will be joined by Ainsley Wallace, the president of the USM Foundation, to talk about the USM Center for the Arts.
Great. Good morning, and thank you for your time today. As you all know, President Edmondson would very much rather be here. She would be here if she could, and she asked me to present in her stead. And I just want to thank President Edmondson in absentia for her personal commitment and service and leadership to this project. So I'm here to discuss with you the proposal for a Center for the Arts, which, with your approval, will be built on the Portland campus at the University of Southern Maine. This is a fulfillment of a decades-long dream. It's also critical to putting our students at the center of arts and culture in Portland, the cultural and economic heart of Maine, which is going to be a differentiator for the university. What I would say is that President Edmondson, there we go. President Edmondson, when she arrived, knew that this project was already underway. And while she has experience with the personal transforming power of the arts, as you all know, the reason why she came to Penn State was because she was accepted into a piano studio. And so she understood the tie to enrollment. She also knew that projects like this can go sideways at institutions. And so she asked a lot of hard questions. And those questions, what she often said is that when projects go sideways, it's often for one of two reasons. One, that they're entirely built on hopes and dreams without programs or students to back them up. Or two, that the long-term vision is not there. And President Edmondson quickly understood that this is not the situation at USM. At USM, we have established programs in music and the arts that have an excellent reputation. There's a little bit of this information in front of you. The Center for the Arts will be the home primarily for the Dr. Alfred and D. Susie Osher School of Music, which produces music educators throughout the state. Many of Maine's K-12 music educators are educated at USM. We also have acclaimed graduates who are Grammy Award winners and Tony Award winners across the country. This is also a home for the visual arts. It provides a meaningful space for the visual arts and for the Department of Theater, who have established graduates throughout the state of Maine and beyond. And we have a long-term vision to provide arts and music programs that will serve the state of Maine and beyond. So where we are today is that we've brought a number of approvals before you, as Trustee Riley mentioned, and thus far the Board of Trustees has approved $4.2 million in expenditures. And today we're asking for authorization to expend up to $63 million to start construction for the Center for the Arts on the Portland campus. And this slide just shows a little bit of where we've been in a nutshell. So from 2018 to 2023, a lot of things have changed. What I would just mention to you is that in early 2022, you see some of the numbers that we thought that we were working with. And since that time, when the CFA cost estimate was last done, construction costs, like in all other sectors, continue to rise nationally. And what happened in Portland mirrored this national trend. So construction inflation increased by approximately 14% nationwide. The Center for the Arts saw approximately a 17% increase in price during this period due to slightly higher inflation due to the specialized nature of the building and higher wage rates in the Northeast. So here's where we are today, that we are looking at a $63 million total budget, and the increase of $18.4 million primarily comes from inflation. The other piece of this is because of the due diligence in this project that this board had asked us to do to ensure that the Center for the Arts will meet the needs of the future. And in this process, known as the design development process, we found that we were meeting almost all the needs. We found a couple of major issues that we were able to resolve comparatively cheaply without making a lot of changes to the design. What I would also say is that we've made a lot of cuts along the way. The building that we're bringing before you, there have been a lot of smart value engineering moves to make sure that this is a building that focuses primarily on teaching and learning. And this is a place that is going to really be a dynamic space for our faculty and for our students. And then we're going to make the most out of every space in this building so that it is used for every conceivable purpose, but primarily this is a teaching and learning facility. So in a moment, I'll ask Vice Chancellor Lowe to speak to some of the elements of the funding model, but let me tell you about the unprecedented philanthropic support behind this project. This is a project that truly has had community support since the mid-90s of people wanting to see the School of Music in particular and the arts in general have a prominent space on USM's Portland campus. And people have shown up beyond our wildest expectations to support this project philanthropically. At first, we anticipated that we could raise $15 million, also when this was a much cheaper project. And we blew past that in less than a year. Our second phase of fundraising is to raise an additional $10 million, which we expect to complete by June 30th. And in our third phase, for the 2 years while the building is constructed, we will continue to raise money for this project. And we know that we will raise at least $4 million. And we're highly confident that the philanthropic momentum that's behind this building, will continue to be record breaking. For the other pieces of the financial model, I'd ask Vice Chancellor Lowe to speak.
Thank you. Just wanted to cover those kind of last three bullet points, and also want to thank the president and Ainsley and the USM team as we've kind of tried to get this project over the finish line and dealing with construction inflation and how we close gaps. It's been a really great team to work with, and happy to be where we are today. So Ainsley talked about the fundraising piece. I think that's a huge piece. It's nearly 50% of the project costs. So I want to definitely acknowledge that. The three other funding sources that would get us over the finish line here. The first one that you'll see listed is $9 million from a UMS revenue bond. So again, these are dollars that are tied to the specific legislative appropriation that we got a couple of years ago that is funding about $75 million worth of infrastructure projects across the system, some deferred maintenance on some of our campuses. 9 million of that was allocated to USM and would be used to cover some of the financing here. You'll see 2 million plus for the sale of Chamberlain Street houses. Again, this is consistent with the board's policy to eliminate space where we see those opportunities, and small white houses on several of our campuses have typically been targeted for these. So we do see an opportunity, especially in the Portland market, where we can both shed some space and also get some additional resources for that. So we've got a conservative estimate here of what we would bring in from that. And then the final piece is a revenue bond funded by the campus through debt service of up to 23 million that would complete the project. We say up to 23 million because the idea is that if we're able to raise money over and above the 29 million, if we're able to sell the Chamberlain Street houses for more than that $2 million number, all of any additional resources would go towards reducing that financing piece. So we will not go over the 23 million. We're hopeful that we'll come back and tell you that we've been able to finance less than that. But those are the four funding sources that fund the project. We're very comfortable about that and happy to answer any questions on those pieces, or Ainsley can help me if there are other questions related to the project.
Thank you. Questions on the Performing Arts Center? Seeing none. Let me move to the resolution that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee and authorizes the University of Southern Maine, acting through the University of Maine system, to increase the authorization to spend up to $63 million to proceed with the construction of the Center for the Arts on the University of Southern Maine Portland campus, and to increase the total square footage to 40,000 gross square feet. Can I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Michaud, seconded by Trustee Kane. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Comments?
As I've only been on the board for 2 years, but this is clearly the most vetted project 2 years that I've been involved, they've done a great job at making the case that the School of Music is central to what USM does and a differentiator of their university from others. They have continually raised the bar on their own fundraising, and to the point where they've recently added another $4 million to their campaign. And hopefully this is a very exciting project, but part of the job of the FFT committee is to vet this. Perhaps we've almost come close to the line of micromanaging at times, but this project makes a great deal of sense, and congratulations to them for all they've done to make up the gap and to even go further. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Important comments. Any other comments or questions? Vice Chair Eames.
Thank you. And I probably should have asked this before, and I'll direct it to whoever can answer it, but I'm assuming that this building venue will also generate revenue once it's up and going.
We briefly conferred about who would answer this, but yes is the answer. There are several major spaces, Trustee Eames. There's a gallery space that we believe will be highly desirable. There's a performance hall, and then there's also attached to the gallery a very flexible rehearsal room and performance space. Groups like Maine State Ballet, other arts organizations who are looking for flexible spaces are very interested in what they can do in this building. And so we really think that it's going to transform the life of the campus and produce revenue beyond what we can even anticipate just yet.
Any other questions or comments? Then we will move to a vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Loring.
Absolutely, yes.
I think Ainsley was very happy to hear that. I think this is the motion passes and it's a exciting moment for USM. So congratulations. Let us now move to the collective bargaining agreement, and I turn to the Chancellor. I turn to the Vice Chancellor. Carolyn.
Just a reminder that the Labor Relations Team has reached an agreement with AFM, which is our full-time faculty union, to extend our current collective bargaining agreement from 2023 into 2024. It will extend the time that we will refrain from bargaining, but it will also offer an opener so that if either one of the parties at any time feels there is a situation that needs to come back to the table, we can come back and discuss it and have open negotiations at that time. So the Labor Relations Team has been working with the leadership in AFM for a while and have come to this arrangement and agreement to extend. The Chancellor has reviewed and approved, and now we're bringing it before the board for your approval.
Any questions or comments about the collective bargaining agreement? Let me move to the resolution. That the Board of Trustees authorizes the Chancellor to execute the collective bargaining agreement with the associated faculties of the University of Maine, AFM, upon notice that the agreement has been ratified. Is there a motion? Moved by Trustee Kane, seconded by Trustee Michaud. All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Loring.
Yes.
Motion passes. Great. Thank you. Let us move to the consent agenda, and I turn to Trustee Eames.
Thank you, Chair Riley. We have a very brief motion before you, and that's that I move for the Board of Trustees to approve the consent agenda item, which is the acceptance of the minutes. Could I have a second? Seconded by.
It's a big responsibility.
I know. The weight on my shoulder. Can I think Trustee Martin seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Trustee Loring.
Yes.
Yeah, I remembered the hardest part.
Sure.
I think the motion is carried.
Great, thank you. Let's move to tab 20. Particularly important as we are here at the University of Maine to hear more about the Wabanaki Center.
Thank you, Chair Riley. I'm happy to introduce Darren J. Rankin, Dr. Rankin, is Chair of Native American Programs, Professor of Anthropology, and coordinator of Native American Research Year, as well as a faculty fellow in the Mission Center, who's sustainability. He's here today to provide us with an overview of the University of Maine's Native American program. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. You're a very efficient group. Very impressed. And my wife was trying to give me a pep talk too. She said, you really have to, sell yourself. And apparently I'm so humble, that I get to do this. So thank you all so much for this time today. And it's unfortunate that Donna is not here. She's been a great mentor to me in so many ways over these many years. So I'm glad to see her. I like that her name tag is just like right here in front of me too. So the idea is that, and what I want to call your attention to is actually the unit is called Native American Programs. The Wabanaki Center was established by the Board of Trustees in 1995, and then Native American Studies was established by the campus in 1997. And together, along with some other pieces that I'll highlight today, we call ourselves Native American Programs. So it's based around a kind of synergy of thinking about research, pedagogy, and service and collaboration as a part of interconnected synergies. So that's the focus of my talk. So here, this is a collective mission and vision statement that we established in 2010. And I just want to highlight the fact that we see ourselves as a leader across the state, and we embody a lot of Wabanaki values in terms of providing a respectful and reciprocal learning and research environment, lifelong learning for all, and that we really see our role as facilitating the intergenerational transmission of Indigenous knowledge. And then sort of for our vision, again, we see ourselves as a leader across the state and the region to facilitate an exchange of knowledge around Wabanaki people and issues. And we've been recognized in these last several years, and this is because of great support the University of Maine and the University of Maine system has shown us. I think we're considered a regional leader around in a couple of areas, and I'm going to highlight those areas. So one of them is research. When I came back home to Maine, I'm a Penobscot Nation citizen and graduate of Orono High School, class of 1989. Anyone else? Red Riots. But so I came and I went away and got all this fancy education out of state. I apologize to the system. And then to come back in 2009 to be able to synergize all of my work experience in education around issues that here on Marsh Island were connected so close to my tribe, the Penobscot Nation, and really build this statewide and regional network around research. And the very first project that I started to engage in was to address an invasive species called the emerald ash borer. And this project has grown in leaps and bounds. We've raised millions of dollars for research and created an infrastructure of response by Indigenous basket makers related to this invasive species. And this is just a new website and a new framework that we've established with my colleague, John Daigle, a host of Indigenous and non-Indigenous graduate students and undergrads, really establishing a statewide plan for response that has Indigenous people, values, and basket making traditions in mind as we respond to an invasive species. In all of our research, we center Indigenous methods in sort of a framework of Indigenous science. And this involves not only sort of what I consider thousands of years of local observation and peer review through multiple generations of Indigenous people science. It also is a way of addressing big problems that affect us all. I gave a TED talk in Portland a few years ago. Some social scientists refer to these as wicked problems. So these are difficult problems that require lots of different kinds of disciplines and frameworks to address. And involving Indigenous science and knowledge traditions is critical to that. And that involves diplomacy, reciprocity, generosity, and a whole host of other values as we think about our responsibility to things like brown ash or black ash as an invasive attacks them. You're also intimidating. I need some water. Another key area of our research program has to do with tribal climate change adaptation. We've been able to get grants from the Northeast Climate Adaptation Science Center at UMass, and really think about how to establish tribal leadership in terms of climate change adaptation. The Passamaquoddy tribe at Pleasant Point and Zabiak is a regional leader in this, partly because their infrastructure is hugely challenged by sea level rise. People know about their water system issues. All of this is interconnected to ongoing issues around climate change. For us, it's also engaging in what we consider key areas around food sovereignty, where climatic changes is impacting the subsistence lifestyles of Indigenous people already here in the state of Maine. And you can talk to even non-Indigenous people, like where do you go to fish and hunt has changed in the last 20 years, and that's because of climate change. So we're really working on establishing climate change adaptation priorities for all of the tribes, and we've been lucky to be funded in that regard. We contribute to scholarship, but even the way we contribute to scholarship has a very Indigenous and Wabanaki framework. Many of our papers involve multiple disciplines, multiple ways of knowing, multiple generations of knowledge creators. So we take very seriously that I, as a full professor, oh, and thank you, by the way, for approving that last year, that I, as a full professor, work with junior faculty, grad students, undergrads. All of our research teams are kind of integral and think about our contribution to knowledge as mentoring and as a framework. And it's across both Indigenous and non-Indigenous scholars. So this is our team for this one paper that we published, and that involved people at Penobscot Nation, involved 3 Native undergraduate students, a couple of Native grad students. And this is our team for just this one paper, but our projects tend to have these sort of frameworks and engagements across these kinds of generations. I do want to say those are just 2 of the projects we're involved in terms of research. We've been really active in the current Maine EPSCoR project for environmental DNA. We have a new project with the Aquaculture Research Institute, building sort of summer research opportunities for Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, and the list can go on and on, but apparently you didn't want to have 40 slides for me here. So in terms of pedagogy, there's been a long history, and I want to thank, of course, my elder, Donna Loring, for she was key to writing this law that we call LD 291, but the Maine Indian History and Culture Law. The University of Maine and Native American programs at the University of Maine has been an integral part of that law and its framing. The Wabanaki Studies Commission, established by that law in 2001, had as its home the University of Maine for its meetings. It was under the previous director of Native American Studies that chaired that commission. And there's legislation currently in draft that would reestablish that commission and really have a statewide leadership again here at the University of Maine. 2 other things related to this. We have a badge that was developed through the Lumina grant across the system called the Donlan Maine Indian History Badge, primarily developed by my colleague, John Bear Mitchell. And it's by far the most popular badge that is created through that grant. And I see Rosa, I believe it's 462 people have already paid the $25 and gotten this badge, and we have hundreds more trying to sign up for the summer. It's a hugely successful program, and it represents a keen interest in teaching Maine Indian history reflective of this 2001 law. The other thing that we've had a real leadership in is what I'm calling a new era in Wabanaki studies education in Maine. The Portland Public School System has a full K-12 curriculum. For the very first time, any of the schools has developed a full curriculum, and we've helped shepherd that through along with a lot of other Wabanaki educators. And to me, that represents a new era in Wabanaki studies education, where the biggest school district in the state now has this full integrated curriculum around Wabanaki studies. The other major program I wanted to highlight was, everything's at an angle here, by the way, that I wanted to highlight was what we call the Wabanaki Youth and Science Program, or the WAYS program. And this was started in 2012 with baseline funding, and you see the Maine EP score. Maine EP score has been a key funder of this program for the last decade or more. And we started this out as looking at, Indigenous students are not achieving quite the same way as non-Indigenous students or in terms of STEM education. But that's not just a local problem, that's a national problem. So we looked around to figure out what kind of programs are successful. And we started to really, engage local communities and educators around how to build a STEM education program for Native youth. So we started with middle and high school students. We wanted to bring together both Indigenous science and Western science in this framework. And we really wanted to address the need for more tribal professionals at the tribal government level and natural resources and environmental programs. Back in 2012, we sat down with John Banks, who many of you probably have heard of, is the former director of the Natural Resources Program for the Penobscot Nation. And the question was, who will replace me? And he retired a year and a half ago now. And we do have a replacement, but we have a whole pathway. We don't use the word pipeline, but a whole pathway of students. Pipelines are evil. Everyone knows that. We have a whole pathway of students that are engaging in these programs that not only John Banks, but a whole staff of people that have gone through the WAYS program, gone to the University of Maine, majored in various STEM fields, and are now staffing the environmental departments and other places too, in federal agencies and all sorts of other things. And within 5 years of establishing this program, we had a 15% increase in STEM majors, Native American STEM majors at the University of Maine. The graduation rate has lagged a little bit from behind that, but we were able to establish a deeper support system for STEM, Native STEM majors at the University of Maine, and now the graduation rate is also at a 15% increase. Just real briefly, one of a couple of the things that we saw that make this program a model program nationally is the inclusion of Western Indigenous science. I mentioned that. We looked around the country too, and the successful programs were engaging in year-long educational programs with Native students. So we have a whole series of things: after-school programs, seasonal science camps, internship programs. And then the last element of this that is also very important and successful is all of our participants have both professional and cultural-based mentorship, which is connecting people to community and seeing themselves into careers and that sort of thing is, for many of you, you understand that that's a key part of the buy-in for higher ed in the first place. So again, I mentioned our sort of service or institutional impacts and leadership. One of the newer programs that we have is related to really building the infrastructure in support for Native students at the University of Maine Machias regional campus. That involves a grant that we were able to get from the USDA called New Beginnings for Tribal Students, and we just called ours New Beginnings for Wabanaki students. You can see the tweet from Senator Collins recognizing our success in that from the fall of 2020. But I wanted to highlight, for the very first time, we have Indigenous Passamaquoddy signage at the UMaine Machias campus. We have a series of events and supports for Native students on campus, as well as a room. It's not a full Native student center, but really emphasizing this connection to the UMaine Machias community, especially Passamaquoddy students, and sort of really digging in and supporting students over there. Another institutional sort of development that has gotten us, really important regional and national recognition has to do with this MOU signed between outgoing President Hunter and Chief Carrick Francis in May of 2018. This was a step forward in terms of the university's sort of leadership of what is our responsibility to Indigenous students, Indigenous cultural holdings, and our location in Penobscot territory. And that involved a number of things that were decades in the making in terms of what is the responsibility. Some of these responsibilities have to do with just building better research relationships through the IRB, managing collections in the Hudson Museum and the Fogler Library, thinking about copyright and other issues related to the University of Maine Press, and then also thinking about collections that the anthropology department holds, archaeological collections. This also involved a whole plan for our Penobscot language signage on campus. I think many of you have seen some of these signs, and I can say that one of the things that we were able to develop just in these last 2 months is there's now a website for the signage project where you can hear all the words in Penobscot. There's a whole guidance in terms of how that works. We kind of on purpose wanted people to kind of struggle with, what is this about? Where am I? Because that alienation or sort of re-indigenizing the place was a purposeful kind of intervention. And now that we have the website, we have another opportunity to highlight this work and really drive it home and what it means for the transformation of our campus. And so that's all I have for today.
Thank you. Some very exciting work. And can we take the slides down so we can get, there she is. Trustee Loring, would you like to, I suspect you might want to add a word or two.
Please.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Yeah, you didn't know I was here, did you, Darren?
No, I saw your name. I referenced you a number of times.
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like you to explain the concept of two-eyed seeing, because I think that's really important to sort of understand.
You want me to describe
Yes,
it?
would you do that?
Absolutely. So two-eyed seeing is actually a Micmac framework, an epistemology taken from the Micmac, which is a part of our cultural confederacy, the Wabanaki Confederacy. It's Etduwabmunk is the Micmac word. And it's actually, we call it two-eyed seeing. It's actually the gift of multiple ways of knowing is a more accurate translation. And I've had this brief discussion with President Farini Mundy in the past that in effect, the Micmac have been dealing with the concept that NSF now calls convergence for thousands of years. So the idea that we would need multiple knowledges to solve sort of society's most important issues is a Micmac teaching, and there are similar notions in the other Wabanaki confederacies. It's basically trying to mobilize different kinds of knowledge to address urgent needs within communities. And so in our framework, that means taking very seriously the knowledge traditions of Indigenous people as well as Western science and trying to think of how they work together. Etduwabmunk or two-eyed seeing is one that has a really important sense of responsibility. Like to know something means that you are responsible for it. And that's the citizenship side of what we think universities are supposed to do is we don't just produce knowledge, we produce a kind of responsibility to action and making the world better. And that's embedded within this teaching from the Micmac. So it's a values as well as a kind of broadening of what counts for sort of knowledge in a world that needs lots of different perspectives.
Yeah, and also if you have what sort of brought that two-eyed seeing concept home to me, if you compare it with the eyeglasses, like one eye sees different, the other one, different focuses, and if you bring those together, like you put on a pair of glasses, you see things a lot clearer with those two concepts.
Absolutely.
And I think that with a lot of the native teachings, with our understanding of our surroundings and our teachings, and you compare that, you put that together with Western, I think there's nothing like it. I think when I saw this this project and the concept, I thought, wow, that's great. Fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Comments or questions for either Trustee Loring or Darren? Thank you. It was a great summary. Thank you.
Oh, President.
President Freeman.
I want to personally thank Darren for this presentation, which spans an extraordinary array of activity that we and colleagues and students are engaged in, and everything from the signage to the strategy for how to roll out the signage to the research that embodies this two-line scene in fundamental ways. Yeah, thank him and so many of the people within the world.
Yeah,
Great work.
thank you.
Great contributions to this campus. It's always fascinating work for me. That's one thing to ask you about this.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's only possible. The support has been really amazing. That our work is, and just to follow up on your comment, President Money, Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous students and these frameworks have been slowly integrating themselves into a lot of the campus-wide. I mentioned EPSCoR, but there's a whole host of other research activities that Indigenous science and Indigenous students and this whole framework is being slowly integrated into. It's not an easy process, as you could probably imagine, but this is, I think we're a leader in this because of the support and the interest in this from our campus.
And I'm sure I speak for everybody. When the first time I saw the signage, I thought, how do you put, I'm so glad that website is President Rice.
Well, I just wanted to thank Dr. Ranko and particularly the Hudson Museum, which is such an important institution because it houses a number of our artifacts and collections that we don't have the capacity to have showing on a permanent, non-display on a permanent basis. And so the agreement we made with those items on a permanent basis with the Hudson is just incredibly valuable for our institution and the work we've done as well.
Absolutely.
Any other, and the Portland schools, would that be fascinating to see that curriculum?
Yeah.
Trustee Swin?
I also want to thank you, Dr. Renko. I have Indigenous friends who have come from out of state to Maine to study, and they look to Maine and look to the Wabanaki Center and Wabanaki Studies here to then bring back to their communities the teachings and learnings that, and so I think this is a contribution to UMS and the state, and just want to thank you for that.
I appreciate it.
Other comments or questions? Remarkable job, and particularly remarkable given that you are the last on the agenda and you can clearly had a completely engaged audience. So thank you so much.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Well, with that, this has been quite a meeting. We've advanced some very important initiatives today. I think we should feel really good about that. And our next meeting is May 21st and 22nd, with apologies to President Hadeen. We're not able to go to the University of Maine at Fort Kent for logistical reasons, so we'll be back here in May, but we'll get to Fort Kent. Not in the winter, but we will get to. Anyway, with that, let me, do we need a motion? We don't need a motion. Let me adjourn and let you know that the lunch is ready. We do have a hefty executive committee meeting. And so what I'd like to do is ask everybody it's in the other room. Everybody to be back in the other room, board members at 12:15, no later, and we'll crank ahead with the rest of our agenda. So with that, thank you all for a great meeting. That's a half an hour. No, it's still 20. Isn't it controversial? What?